here in Sao Paulo at BJJ Stars 14. And we have the lone American in the mix out of Silver Spring, Maryland, Malachi Magic Man Edmond, in what should be an exciting moment for him.
Yeah, this is a huge moment for Malachi, competing in Brazil against a sea of Brazilian featherweights, but Malachi tends to live up to the moment. He's got some really tricky submissions always up his sleeve. That's why they call him the Magic Man, but his first opponent is going to be the Hokage himself, Fabricio Andrey, now competing out of Alliance Sao Paulo in Brazil. Fabricio, I'm sure, with a home crowd behind him, and always explosive, always exciting to watch, walking out now into white.
Number 20 ranked featherweight on the planet with a 53% career submission rate. You talk about his excitement. His run at Polaris in 2023 was absolutely stunning. The Uchimata he hit on the 88-kilogram champion Giancarlo Bodini last year. Great at using that to escape body locks, his wrestling, his judo, and against a guy who goes for as much wild stuff as Malachi. It feels like this is the big opportunity for us to see some pop-off moments.
Yeah, Fabricio loves those moments, those exchanges where he can use his favorite particular weapons have always been the ankle pick, the Uchimata, and the triangle. Those triangles come from just about everywhere. So curious to see now if Fabricio wants to try this thing out standing or pull guard and get to work with his triangle game.
And you see Malachi shoot in from distance. Not much was happening from way out there. And maybe looking for something. Does get Malachi to the ground. Points awarded for Fabricio.
Fabricio has been so good in recent months with that Kouchigari. Another kind of trademark favorite of his recently. He hit it at the ADCC World Championships earlier this year in the first match against DeAndre Cobre. One of the slickest Kouchigaris I've ever seen.
Now Malachi Edmond has to make a choice. Is he going to play from the back or try to work his way to his feet against Hokage?
Pound for pound, Fabricio has some of the strongest grips on earth. So this grip fight is going to be real difficult for Malachi, but he also takes risks and might give Malachi some opportunities to come up. You've got to take every risk Fabricio takes with a grain of salt, because he might just be walking you into a trap. But yeah, he has this great blend of patience and kind of, you would almost call it recklessness.
The ability to measure when to go and when to hold. You talk about sort of how a lot of these guys got into jiu-jitsu, and Malachi has a different story than pretty much all of his competitors, who mostly found their way out of the mat as children or youth looking for something to redirect themselves. He started mimicking Power Rangers as a kid, and Malachi's, whoa, here we go.
Got a big loop choke here from Fabricio. I can't see how tight it is, but Fabricio seems pretty sold on it. Got the arm over. He's got his left hand stuffed under his wrist, making it very hard for Malachi to get his head out here. Malachi trying to move his hips, but even those are locked down, and Fabricio will pick up an advantage for that gnarly little loop choke.
Malachi does end up on top now with a chance to score back in his own direction.
And he will score 2 for coming up, but gives that right back up to Fabricio, who's looking to get outside the legs.
And Malachi knows he does have to take advantage of a big moment, maybe find something in a scramble.
Good control of the hips there by Fabricio to solidify that pass. No score yet, although it looks like the referee may be handing out points right about now.
There we go. A little over 4.5 minutes left in this one, but so far it has been a lot for Fabricio and a momentary shine of greatness from Malachi, but needs a lot more now, down by 7.
And that's what I mean. That's what I was talking about with Fabricio's kind of calculated recklessness, going for that loop choke, giving up the 2 points, but then taking them right back and going back on the attack. He's a very explosive athlete who makes what you may call mistakes. They're just the calculated risks that he can use to end the match at any moment, or at least get a massive advantage as he has right now.
Well, you talk about that ebb and flow of Fabricio, and that kind of is true about his career, right? At ADCC Brazil Trials that he won this year, 5 subs in a row with that same style. But then you talk about right now, He's lost 4 of his last 5 matches to Diego Sodra, who we'll see tonight, Diego Oliveira, Baby Shark got him at ADCC, Wagner Rocha as well. So he's been kind of on a bit of a skid as of late, and maybe that speaks to his style of grappling.
That's exactly it. I think that Fabricio, when he wins excitingly. When he loses excitingly because he's not scared to take risks, and that's what makes him such a fan favorite. Is that he's gonna take the hard matches, right? That Wagner Rocha match, they had 25 pounds in difference, but a lot of these matches that most athletes would avoid, he's going after and going on the chase. In the Pato match, the Diego Batista match, he put Pato under the kind of pressure we don't normally see Pato in. Now, that that risk takingness and the explosiveness sometimes kind of gets the better of him, and he can wear out towards the end of matches. But when he gets control early, he tends to dominate, as we're seeing right now with the knee on belly again, looking to slip to mount. Also seeing signs of a potential back take here.
Yeah, Malachi now maybe being made to pick his poison. Where do you want to be at a disadvantage against Fabricio Andrey as you enter the final 3 minutes?
And with this leg drag grip now that he has with his left hand, looks like he's going to just try and flatten Malachi out, make him desperate here. Big cross face there with the right as well.
Malachi had been, for a long time, dominated the American Northeast. Of course, it's a different breed once you come down here to Sao Paulo.
Yeah, this is Fabricio's territory right now. He's born in Manaus, but has spent the better part of the last 3 years living in Sao Paulo, training at Alliance with Michael Lengi and crew. We'll see more of the Alliance crew tonight. Malachi is going to score for that. They're calling it a sweep, and right on the pressure, he knows he's got short time and a lot to come up with.
And Malachi now, as you said, has to score, has to move, and does allow his opponent back to his feet. Will he be looking for a throw here to try to score big?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting decision where Malachi goes. He's felt Fabricio's. It doesn't matter where Malachi wants to go because Fabricio, with that trademark ankle pick of his, puts Malachi right back to his back.
And yet it's the same as we saw earlier. Malachi does score and immediately offer those points right back to Andrey.
Fabricio is just so good with that ankle pick. We've been watching him do it since before he won his world title in 2021. That's always been kind of his favorite takedown. He uses that a lot with the Uchimata, but if he can see the ankle and make that reach, it's coming, and if you defend it, he's got something else waiting.
Minute 45 left, maybe a little bit less. The clock seems to be stalled out on the graphics on screen. So when you talk about what Malachi does at this moment, are you going to try to, again, sweep and score, or are you submission hunting at this point?
I think at this point, if you're Malachi, you've got to start looking for submissions. That is not easy because you know Fabricio is going to be very vigilant about just not making mistakes at this point. He's not the one who has to take a risk anymore. It's going to be all on Malachi to make a risk. He's down by 7 points. There's only a minute left. Fabricio right now probably wise to just kind of patiently, cautiously work through this guard. But it's going to be Malachi who's got to make something happen, take a big risk, and if you can find a submission, that's what you should be looking for.
Malachi trying to elevate Fabricio, doing his best to stay heavy. Edmund would love to elevate and turn this into a dirty scramble, maybe catch on to something.
Keep in mind, too, this is a Grand Prix. This is the first round of the Grand Prix, so a lot of athletes would be kind of complacent in just taking the win here. That's not Fabricio's style. Fabricio wants to hit a home run at the very end of this match.
And Fabricio maybe still looking for the pass. Strong grip on that left shin.
And the clock winds to 0. Fabricio Andrey will move on to the semifinal round here in the Featherweight Grand Prix at BJJ Stars.
And a beautiful performance at that. We saw some of the takedown game working to his advantage, and we saw, even more importantly, that give and take that you talked about. The take one step backward to open up 2 or 3 steps forward, and that's reflected in the scoreline tonight.
I can't remember the last time I saw Fabricio go for a loop choke, but that looked like a really savage choke. So some new and some old out of Fabricio. We saw 2 of his maybe most common or favorite techniques, that Kawuchi Gari to open things up, and then the ankle pick laid on in
O
the match
primeiro
to
vencedor
kind of
das
put the icing
quartas
on
de
the cake.
final,
And Malachi
Fabricio
Edmond travels a long
Andrey.
way for this one. Seemed like he was having a mostly fun time out there. Took some looks, took some risks,
Melhores momentos no telão pra
and you don't feel like
vocês.
he's walking away having left much out there tonight.
No, he did what he had to do. He made every moment count. He tried to make something work. Fabricio just that good, right? If you give Fabricio an inch, he's going to take a mile. And Fabricio got the ball rolling before Malachi could. That's what happens at this high level. The first mistake almost always loses.
And Malachi, of course, has had a nice couple of moments in 2024. Did take silver at Pans this year. And, you know, you talk about a guy who has kind of one of the lighter schedules competitively out of anyone here. You get the impression maybe that if he was putting the same mileage on that a lot of these other competitors are doing, that we might see some more of those high-level results.
You know, that's a decision that every athlete kind of makes. Some athletes only perform well if they're competing every weekend. I know Malachi's teammate Jamil also doesn't compete that often, and they've both kind of expressed that competing that much at this high of a level, at the black belt level, isn't good for them. They put the miles on at blue and purple and brown belt, but at this period, they both believe that maybe kind of dialing it back and only going into heavy camps when it matters, when there's something to win, when there's something that they want to win. So that's a strategy they all have to make differently. Of course, you know, you see the results, but that might just, you know, be better day, better time for Fabricio.
Well, Fabricio Andrey moving forward to the semifinals in our featherweight Grand Prix. He'll await the winner of Diego Sodre and Israel Almeida. We'll be seeing that later tonight. For now, we have our second matchup coming here in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. This is FloGrappling.
Bora seguir então, gente. Segunda, quartas de final. Oferecimento Prime Sports. Representando a equipe Almeida Jiu-Jitsu. Bora fazer barulho para Kleber Souza.
Welcome back as we go into our second matchup of this Grand Prix, where Kleber Souza takes on the man of the night, Meyram Maquine, who is the most frightening man at featherweight on the planet right now.
Yeah, Meyram Maquine, originally a light featherweight where he won a world title in 2021, but in 2024 he did something absolutely just remarkable. Not only did he compete in and win the featherweight division, but he climbed through most of the open weight division to take third place. He lost to Jansen Gomes, who would go on to get injured, but Jansen we'll see later tonight as well. But that is an incredible size difference that he surmounted.
Yeah, making it to third place in absolute as a featherweight is absolutely insane, but it also speaks to the idea of jiu-jitsu. That a guy this light can still compete against the big boys.
Absolutely, and it's equally impressive how he did it. He wasn't pulling guard and using his guard. He was taking down some super heavyweights, some heavyweights, some ultra heavyweights, and just using his phenomenal judo game to kind of take control of the matches. be surprised if we get to see a lot of his judo here. I expect to see Kleber pull. Maybe
Kleber,
I'm wrong, though.
yeah, so far happy to stand. Of course, the record is 1-4 in favor of Maquine between these two, but Kleber does have the most recent win between the two of them. Last time they met in 2023.
This is what I'm talking
Wow.
about. Straight into the armbar. He looks like he has that. He gets
Oh
a tap in.
my
Incredible.
word.
Incredible work there by the reigning featherweight world champ, Meyram Maquine, in front of the Fratries crowd. Fantastic work to use that judo, create an opening, and jump right onto that Choi bar style armbar. Look at this.
This is beautiful. Gets him moving, steps on over, and there was nothing. I mean, that is such a quick tap.
And look at the snap on that Sasai that set that all up, right? That high collar grip to create the steering wheel style movement. And then as soon as Kleber's arm went to the mat, Meyram jumped right on it.
And what a disappointing moment for Kleber, who now falls to 1-5 against the current reigning featherweight champion. And after a great performance at BJJ Stars 13, where he submitted Philippe Nassib, comes out here and gets taken care of very quickly.
When Meyram is on, when he's got the face, the kind of face that he's wearing right now, you know it's going to be trouble for everybody else in the division.
And a big cheer from the crowd, recognizing they just saw some great work from one of the best, who will probably start to make his case for being on that all-time list here at featherweight. Let's take one more look at the very short bout we had in this one, and continuously just threatening outside with that trip. And then here we go. Talk us through it, Corey.
Yeah, he's going to take a look at an Uchimata here, I think, right to go out of bounds. And he knows now, he's got the kind of bounce in his step that he's leading Kleber around. Here's the high grip for the Sasai. When Kleber posts on the right hand, he leaves his left hand tangled up, and it does not take more than a couple seconds to straighten the arm out and collect the armbar. We'll see it once more here, the full sequence. Chopping that leg on the right side.
Adding that 54% submission rate. You talk about Maquine. Not only does he sub at a very high rate, has never been submitted in competition.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody would want to leave that much open space against Meyram. Look at that once more, that high collar grip into the Sasai and the flying armbar. And
the celebration, taking a couple of shots at the arm as he did on camera for us. And this is a guy who, of course, could not be in a better place right now in the division. Who's left who creates the biggest threat for him? Next up, he'll be facing the winner of Kwa or Kennedy Maciel. Is Maciel maybe the most dangerous guy remaining for him here?
I would say probably the two threats that have the best chance at taking on somebody like Meyram are Fabricio Andrey with his equally dangerous judo and wrestling, and Kennedy, who is just well-rounded. When Kennedy is on, he is on. So it depends on how we see Kennedy in the upcoming match. But if Kennedy is having the kind of day that he can have, he'd be a great threat for Meyram.
Well, we will find out more about that later. Partway through our opening round of the Featherweight Grand Prix. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Como lutador de jiu-jitsu, eu sempre sonhei viver aqui nos Estados Unidos. E através da equipe Reach Law, eu consegui realizar meu sonho. E hoje eu tenho meu green card e estou a caminho da cidadania.
Eleve o nível de segurança e tecnologia da sua academia com os tatames Prime Sports, a única empresa no mundo a fabricar os 4 tipos de tatames. Preços de fábrica e instalação em todo o Brasil. Prime Sports. Tatame não é tudo igual.
Vambora, gente, vambora porque tá bom demais. Bem-vindo.
Two of our semi-finalists settled in Fabricio Andrey and Meyram Maquine, looking to join our final four coming up next. Diego Sodre and Israel Hayal Almeida in what has been a fun matchup in the past. They put on a absolute show earlier this year in Rio, and coming out first in this one, it's going to be Israel Almeida.
Kyle Almeida, formerly out of GF Team, has that very GFT style, the strong split passing, the really heavy pressure. When he gets into his guard, it's generally that collar sleeve play. It's going to be an interesting match to see if he can get his pressure in on one of the best guard players in the business, in Diego Sodre.
And the 26-year-old Sodre about to make his way down to the mat with one of the lower submission rates overall amongst our top-tier competitors here, 27%, 15 of his 56 victories by submission. That has not stopped him from having success, though. First place at Euros in 2022. First place at Pans in both weight and absolute in 2022. And, of course, this year, a few third places at Worlds, Pans, and Euros.
Yeah, the Sodre brothers, both of them, but Diego especially, despite the fact that they are not normally submission hunters, they often cause their opponents to kind of panic, and when they get submissions, it's from that panic that their guards are so resilient, so difficult to deal with, that they force their opponents to panic and give something away, and that's when they score. They're great strategists, really smart players, and they know when to give and when not to give any openings.
Árbitro central, Arnaldo, que vença o melhor.
As our competitors get ready to take the center of our mat and kick things off. Hayal in the blue gi, white gi for Diego.
Sodre, very quick knee tap into the guard pull, something that he does very well. He wants to play his guard. He wants to tie Hayal up and getting right into this lasso position.
Now, one of the places Hayal is most dangerous is from the back. 22 finishes with chokes from the back in high-level competition. What are some of the keys for Diego to make sure that doesn't happen playing these guard positions?
It really looks like just playing his game, tying Hayal up. Now, the trick is going to be tying him up without attracting the attention of the judges, right, of the referees. The Sodre brothers are both very good at creating stalemates or positions where not a whole lot is happening and forcing the top player to freak out, to get frustrated, to panic. But if the judge gets involved, that may go against the guard player's way.
Oh, and look at this. Maybe about looking to complete the pass doesn't quite make it work, and instead, there we go, all the way around. Can he free the feet? And Sodre just trying to hold on here and looking like maybe he's going to search for a leg. Inverted goes Hayal.
Interesting position here. I'm curious to see what Israel Almeida does. If he drops to his back here, he's going to give up the sweep, and there it is. 2 points for Sodre, and Sodre looking to spin his legs around top or take the back himself, getting that climbing grip. He's got a really good crab ride in here. The referee's going to reset us to the center, but it looks like Sodre has the better grips here, the better leg position here. We'll see how they reset this.
And really trying to make sure he understands exactly where every piece is. And maybe Israel objecting to some of the referee decisions here. And we're back on.
Sodre has both of his hands inside the drawstring of Almeida here. So those are really good grips to dominate the opponent's hips, right? He can pull Almeida's hips to the mat or pull Almeida's hips off the mat, giving him really the priority in this position. Now, the hooks are kind of tangled up, the legs are tangled up, but Sodre going to look to come up probably into a leg drag here, keeping that left leg extended across his body and using it to establish top position with a threat of the pass.
Big breath there from Diego Sodre with a lot of time left, just under 5 minutes remaining.
He is the kind of athlete, though, that will find a position like this where neither person can really work and just stay patient, use it to make a decision, force his opponent to start to get, as I've said, a little frustrated with the position. So Andrey very rarely makes the first mistake.
And you see some really hard breaths from Israel Almeida, who now, after taking some deep ones, starts trying to work his way up.
See, he allowed Almeida to start to climb up and then try to take the back. And now Almeida knows, okay, if I go to my hands, if I try and build up, my back is exposed. Let's keep my back on the mat. And this is where Sodré might use it to pass. So Sodré allowing Almeida to experience with two bad options and making him choose which one's better.
Almeida looking to lock down the hips, maybe opens and closes those feet on the right-hand side.
50-50 now with a deep hip grip for Sodré. Might be using that once again to create back exposure, create a threat on the back, but he gives that grip up.
And again, maybe similar sequence to last time.
That may have been a mistake there by Almeida to come up. Sure, he scores the 2 points, but he puts the ability to score at any time in Sodré's hands. So I may be incorrect here. I think the BJJ Stars' newest rule set means that you can't score from inside the 50-50. So we're in the same scenario, really, right? Almeida on top doesn't score for coming to top position.
And that maybe, gotta wonder if he is now thinking about that in reverse, remembering, and a little maybe grimace of pain there from Diego, as that was a bit of an awkward position.
And now gets right behind again, looking again for that drawstring grip. This time the legs are not in the best position to chase the back, but he settles back for 50-50. Looking for maybe an armbar here, a little cheeky 50-50 armbar, but he uses it to get on top. Very smart to use the arm to create the opening he needed to get out of the 50-50 and into top position. And again, look at the face, Sodré's face, so calm, so patient, never really going to force anything, just going to put enough pressure on Almeida to get frustrated.
Almeida holding on to that lapel grip, gets broken, and now Sodré maybe starting to try to look for a pass. This has been much slower than a lot of the matches we've watched today.
It's kind of the pace that Sodré lives in, and it's smart for him to maybe keep this slow, steady pace. He knows he's got up to 2 more matches left. He's just not forcing any opportunities, right? He's waiting for opportunities to come, and he's up on the scoreboard, meaning the onus is on Almeida to make something happen.
And this does feel somewhat similar to the match they had at the finals in Rio earlier this year. A lot of back and forth, but a bit more dominant from Diego than that time.
And Sodré now puts another 3 on the board for that guard pass. Now he'll start to look to attack, but cautious attacks, right? No big risks, just attacking the arm. You can see his coach, Fei Zhao, telling him to just kind of stay put.
Black belt since 2020, awarded by Fei Zhao. And his black belt campaigns have, of course, been great, but you have to go back to his purple belt campaign to really think about the origins of Diego Sodré's brilliance. First at Worlds, first in Brazil, and first in South Americans, all as a blue and purple belt.
That was an interesting little step over choke there. He tried. You'll see now that he's in this dominant position. He's up on the scoreboard, but not by so much that he can take huge risks. So he just takes those calculated risk submission attempts, right? That step over choke. Not a whole lot of risk in just stepping over the head. You can step back if it doesn't work. He's not going to give up a whole lot of position. He'll just funnel himself back into the guard and walk away knowing there's 4 seconds left on the clock. He takes the win to move on in this featherweight Grand Prix.
Got those points early, and as you said, calculated minimal risks to take the victory. And Hey, all. We saw him breathing really heavily about the second time they reset in that deep 50-50 position, and it felt like he couldn't get the energy as the fight went later to make anything of it.
Yeah, the Sodrés, they keep that kind of calm composure, but despite the fact that it looks like they're not doing a whole lot, it seems to be exhausting for the person on the other side. So whether it's something in the grips or in their pressure, I have no idea, but it seems to be kind of a trend. Every match you see Diego and Alex Sodré in is that they look like they're not working and their opponent looks like they've just been fed to a wolf.
Absolutely draining, and kick things off with the guard pull from Diego. And then we're going to see one of those scoring moments right about here. And this is the inversion that ended up working out very poorly for Israel.
And really the most decisive moment of the match, and that Israel Almeida had an opportunity to make something happen, but just let it fall into this leg entanglement, which gave Sodré back control of the match. And if Sodré has control of the grips and control of the leg positioning, they're going to find a way to make it work at the end.
And that was the grimace I mentioned when they were live in the action and getting very close, I believe, to the pass. And Sodré just, as you mentioned, really drained Almeida throughout this matchup, and you can almost watch his energy bar continuing to go from the green to the yellow all the way into the red.
That pass at the end was really, really well executed technique by Sodré to kind of stack and fold the legs over. Again, not rushing into anything, but just finding the right moment, the moment that Hayel seemed to have given up, and just take the pass. And that's trademark Sodré.
Well, quarterfinal number 3 in the books with Diego Sodré moving forward. One more for this phase of our Featherweight Championship coming up in a few minutes. We'll be right back with Kennedy Maciel, and for many of you, the black belt debut of Kua Gabriel.
Estilos batem de ser forte. Beba com moderação.
Vamos continuar por aqui, porque esse GP já está tomando forma, já temos, né, alguns atletas aí em nome. E agora a gente vai para as quartas de final, representando a equipe Melk Galvão. Essa luta tem o oferecimento Kings. Vem pra cá, Cauã Gabriel.
Our final of our first round. For many of you, the black belt debut of one of the more exciting colored belts in the last few years, Kua Gabriel.
Kua, a black belt under Melky Galvão, a really strong up-and-coming brown belt who recently got promoted to black belt. He competed at ADCC 2024, didn't get very far, but he's been competing with the best in the business for a very long time. His run at the South American ADCC trials was nothing short of spectacular. He's got a really dangerous footlock game that plays its way most often in no-gi, but don't be fooled. Even in the gi, his footlocks are menacing.
Those footlocks are going to be difficult to find against one of the top-ranked featherweights in the world right now in Kennedy Maciel, who you talk about having a great 2024, first at Euros, first at Pans, first at Worlds, first at Brazilian trials for ADCC. Maciel is surging here in 2024.
Yeah, this has been the most impressive year of Kennedy's career. He won every IBJJF major, with the exception of Worlds. He fell just a little bit short there, but he won Euros, he won Pans, he won Brasileiro, and looked just fantastic doing it. It's been the best year of his career, and that includes the year that he won silver at ADCC. He looks more himself, more complete as an athlete, more confident as an athlete than he ever has before.
And despite being the son of a jiu-jitsu legend, Rubens Charles didn't start training until much later in life, around 15 years old. But then it didn't take him long to get his black belt in 2018 after a brown belt campaign with 7 golds in 7 consecutive
Yeah,
tournaments.
sometimes jiu-jitsu is just in the blood.
Kwa Gabriel, also from a jiu-jitsu family. His mother was a purple belt when he started.
Kennedy scores an advantage for coming up off of that pull. It's another instance where we see the kind of fake knee tap into the guard pull, but Kennedy uses it to come up on top. Entering into that looks like a reverse De La Riva-esque, maybe De La Riva-esque guard of Kamal Gabriel, and right into the keymaster position.
Aside from being a jiu-jitsu competitor, Kwa Gabriel, a judo state champion in 2020, a lucha livre national champion in 2022.
Seems to be more and more par for the course for those Melky Galvao black belts to have a lucha livre black background as well as a judo background. Melky seems to demand of all of his athletes that some experience in lucha livre, some experience in judo. They are as well rounded as they come.
These two did meet earlier this year at ADCC Brazil, the first one, where it was Kennedy Maciel taking the win in the finals.
Kawan made it to both finals in both of the ADCC trials. His first finals match was against Kennedy. His second was against Fabricio Andrey. So Kawan has his experience, as I mentioned, against some of these black belts, despite only recently being a black belt. Taking a look now at Diogo Reis, the baby shark in his corner here.
Where did they call him when he's 30?
Baby shark for life. The only other acceptable nicknames are the baby goat or the megalodon, and you can ask Diogo himself.
And once he goes gray, we'll start calling him Grandpa Shark. Play the whole song.
Good position here by Fabricio with that crazy dog-esque pass. He's got a high collar grip. He's got a nice low pant grip with his left hand. He's starting to put some pressure down on Kawan.
Kwa, two-time Nogi champion at brown belt in Brazil in 2023, both at weight and in open.
Kennedy with a diving leg drag. Really nice. Kawa does well to get his right leg inside, but now Kennedy in the driver's seat with the dominant grips, with good hip position, and he comes up into a double underpass. Seeing more and more of that diving leg drag or the diving crab ride. Really good way to keep the guard player on his toes, knowing that you can at any point just enter into the final stages of the passing position.
This pass getting closer and closer for Maciel. Kwa opting to try to get to his knees here and see if he can work his way out from this position.
Going to be interesting to see what Kennedy does with this. If he, step over is a great option there to try and threaten the back, looking like almost got a crucifix grip here, controlling that arm to prevent Kawa from rolling away.
And that arm is very far behind his body. Kwa able to get free, and now though fighting against the back attack of Maciel.
Kennedy should be scoring 4 here. All he's got to do is get that heel, get his hooks inside. Both hooks currently out, but he's got a dominant control of the head and shoulders.
Just passing the 3 minutes remaining mark. First hook in for Maciel.
Building up. Now there's a double threat there. You know he wants the back, but Kawan has to respect the ability of Kennedy to take him out instead. Makes it very challenging to defend when you're defending 2 things at once. And that should count as a hook for Kennedy. That's going to be 4 points, and he settles in the body lock.
And this is a big shift in this matchup for Kawan, because now he not only falls way behind, but has to work out from this brutal position from someone as suffocating as Kennedy Maciel.
2.5 minutes remaining, and Kawa really has to make something work here. Easier said than done, of course. He's constantly going to have to be dealing with the grips that are already inching up that neck, constantly exposing the neck and the collars. But in order to get anything done, he's either going to need to get out of the seatbelt or release the hooks from around his waist.
And you see Diogo Reis looking very closely at his friend and teammate, trying to work out of this position. And this is a different position depending on what belt you're at, right? As a white belt, they teach you get your back to the mat and start to move your hips a little bit. But at this level, what are the things that Kawhi can do to try to start creating an opportunity to change this match?
Yeah, at this point, he's got to take a risk, right? There's 90 seconds left, of course. He wants to get his head, his back, his shoulders to the mat, but he's always going to have to worry about what Kennedy has sitting there in the collars, up his sleeve. He can attack the arm at this point. He can attack the neck. Kennedy is just making it miserable on Kawhi, so Kawhi can't really think about escaping while he's thinking about surviving.
Kawhi trying to see if he can find a way to get chest to chest. Can't do it. Minute 12 left. Maciel, of course, continuing to attack and make sure the referee knows that his opponent is always in danger.
And he's doing a really smart job of switching the hands. If you notice, just 20 seconds ago, his left hand was over the top. When Kawhi started defending the left hand, Kennedy threaded the right hand over the top. So constantly bothering the face, the neck, the collars of Kawhi, making it so he can't think about releasing the hooks or get his head down to the mat. He's just fighting the hands. And the longer he does this, the more time Kawhi's wasting.
Final 30 seconds. And unlike a lot of positions, this is one of those ones where it's hard to create a risky exchange here.
Yeah, absolutely. Kennedy is in the driver's seat. He's got chest to back connection. He really doesn't have to take a risk. He can stay in this position and not just open things up, but nurse the clock down to 0. Now he's going for a submission here. Looks like there may be a collar grip in play, looking for potentially a modified bow and arrow. Or he's getting the stretch on. It looks like he might think he has something here.
And what he does have is a victory in the first round of this featherweight tournament. Welcome to black belt, Kawhi Gabriel.
So we have our semifinalists set in place. It's going to be Fabricio Andrey, Meyram Maquine, Diego Sodre, and Kennedy Maciel. The four, I would say probably the four favorites in this bracket, all advancing forward with four really dramatically different paths, right? Kennedy, we most recently saw just a great demonstration of pressure and back control. Meyram Maquine earlier with just some of the most dynamic jiu-jitsu we've seen all day, and that flash armbar. Sodre with the calculated, very, very strategic play, and Fabricio with kind of a little bit of a hybrid of everything.
And it kind of shows you the full breadth of what's offered here at BJJ Stars and all of our grappling content at Flow Sports. And you talk about dream matchups. You know, you'd love to see it as a final, but one of our two semifinals, Meyram and Kennedy, will be getting into the mat together.
That's going to be a really interesting match between two very different styles of play, right? The dynamic, kind of high-flying, explosive versus this kind of controlled, technical, precise that we saw from Kennedy in this match.
And Kawhi, you know, obviously every matchup is different, every moment is different, but, you know, when you take a look at the way that this one went, it became dominant very quickly for Kennedy Maciel. Is that speaking more to Kennedy's level, more to Kawhi still adjusting to the difference in competition here at black belt?
I think it's a little bit of both of those things. Kennedy is the kind of person that you do not want to make a mistake on, but one thing that I've heard Kawhi's teammate Mika saying is that at black belt, you may only have one mistake to take advantage of. So if your partner, your opponent makes a mistake and you're not ready, you may have lost the match. Kennedy found the mistake earlier and did not let it fall through his fingers. That's what gave him the win.
And that's that. You talk about there's levels to the game. That's that different level of not just not making the mistake, but making sure to take advantage, step through that door when it opens up.
Right. There may only be one. You've got to be able to jump on it, and Kennedy did just that.
Well, there can only be one champion tonight in this featherweight tournament. We have 4 players left who are all vying for that title of our featherweight Grand Prix champion. But they're going to take a break and get themselves a little bit of rest as they prepare for their semifinal matchups. And now we're moving in to some more of our super fights on the evening. And next up, I think one of the more interesting ones that we have on the card for tonight, that's Marco Aurelio against Rafael Paganini. And you and I were talking beforehand, this is a really interesting matchup between two players who are at kind of different stages and directions in their careers.
Yeah, I would say Marco Aurelio is a little bit later on in his career, whereas Paganini is probably in his prime right now. Also interesting to note, this is the only no-gi match on the card. It will be an 80cc modified rule set. We're looking at Aurelio right now making his walk to the mat. Aurelio 34, Paganini in his late 20s. I believe we saw 28 there on the screen. So Paganini reaching his prime and Aurelio just a little bit past it. But both of these athletes, very high-level jiu-jitsu, very explosive and dynamic no-gi, as you often see from the no-gi matches on the BJJ Stars stage. I would expect this one to go from corner to corner, edge to edge. Might trickle into the tables and the referees over there.
And it's fun to put all of these together. And as we do see Paganini making his way in, one of the highest submission rates on our lineup tonight, 64% of his matchups ending by way of submission, 35 of those, more than half of those, coming by guillotine, arm in and arm out collectively. This is a guy who gets a hold of your neck and squeezes hard.
Yeah, and so Aurelio will have to be very cautious if he decides to play the wrestling game and take a shot on Paganini, that he doesn't leave his head just hanging out there in the middle of nowhere, because Paganini will snatch it up.
Not a lot of no-gi action tonight. Nice to mix it up a little bit as we get into these two, as the men shake hands in the middle, and immediately Paganini getting aggressive.
Yeah, right onto the head control. You know he wants to feed Aurelio's head right into the armpit. But Paganini takes a seat early, pulls guard with the wrist control. He's going to start to build his guard up here. Already control of the leg. Leaves his own head out there for Aurelio's guillotine, but does a good job of keeping his head on the high side and creating a back threat.
I'm looking to score early as Paganini. Good scramble from Aurelio, who is going to turn it the opposite direction.
That's a great position he used to maintain control of the legs, putting Paganini on his back and negating any scoring opportunity. But Paganini once again in on the legs, looking to get into some kind of leg entanglement, or as we're seeing right now, using it to come to the top.
We've seen a lot of players going a little more slowly tonight. You can see the difference in the gi versus the no-gi. A lot slicker and faster when you don't have all that stuff to grip onto.
Paganini was doing a good job of staying on the outside. If you believe you have an athletic advantage over an opponent, good job to stay on the outside and just wear them out, make them chase you for the first couple moments of the match, to wear them down, get some kind of cardio or gas advantage in the matchup.
You can hear some of Paganini's supporters in the crowd cheering him on, enjoying the position he's in.
A good position here, controlling the hips, head on the chest, doing a very good job of caging the hips already and creating some pressure via his shoulder and head position.
Just trying to walk it up very slowly. Elevates Aurelio, looking to take that off balance. Doesn't happen, and we end up north-south.
Jumped a little bit past the guard. It looked like Aurelio might have been able to scramble up, but Paganini did a good job of keeping his weight centered on Aurelio's chest and making it difficult for him to turn, solidifying that pass, and we will see that display on the scoreboard momentarily. You know what, my mistake. This is 80cc rules, meaning that doesn't score. It will score starting at the halfway point of the match, but for now it's an open, no-score match.
And you can understand maybe some of the early risk-taking here in that context. And an uncomfortable grip coming from Paganini. A little American wrestling going on there, maybe.
Doing a good job of staying just across the body, making himself heavy in Aurelio's sternum. Aurelio trying to create some side-to-side momentum here, but not doing enough really to get his shoulders and his head off the mat.
Getting the hips up a little bit, but Paganini's so heavy.
Frames inside now, this is a little bit better. He's got his frames, his elbows inside the hips. That can start to create some distance, which is what he desperately needs right now, is some distance between his hips and Paganini's.
Approaching the 3-minute mark in this no-gi matchup. So far it's been all Paganini, but no worse for wear is Aurelio.
Now this is an interesting position on Aurelio's left arm, and I'm wondering if it's trapped in there or if Aurelio's just leaving it in there. Now it's free to move, but it looked momentarily like his wrist and elbow were trapped in that position.
Almost able to turn into him was Marco.
Paganini looks like he got a warning for stalling. I saw the referee kind of pat him on the back there. I'm wondering if that's going to reflect on the scoreboard or if that was just a warning.
Looking maybe to turn this into side control. Slide towards the mount is Paganini. Is he searching for an arm also here? And as we pass that 3-minute point, this story changes dramatically.
Aurelio retained his guard, and I'm curious if Paganini allowed him to as a way to open up some scoring possibilities. There were no points allowed essentially up until 3 minutes remaining, and now Paganini can score if he passes the guard again.
Paganini able to pass fully and settle, and that will be the first score. And you see the tongue out to his supporters on the side. And it does feel like he is supremely confident in this matchup.
Big, heavy cross face and looking to proceed right ahead to the mount.
Oh, boy.
And climbing up that arm for a katagatame.
You talk about those first few minutes, and it was just wearing his opponent down, making him all that hip motion back and forth. How much can I drain you to score later?
That's good strategic jiu-jitsu. Why fight a full gas tank when I can make him work harder than me and fight a drained opponent?
Final 90 seconds, 5-point lead for Paganini. You know, would love to end this one with a submission, in a really good position to do so.
He's going to go back to the well on that katagatame and see if he can either set up the arm triangle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him try and take the back with this, as we see Aurelio's doing making a strong effort to keep his hips moving. But every time he moves his hips, he has to take his back off the mat just a little bit and giving exposure to Paganini. So Paganini now has two options. He can continue to fight for that katagatame or just take the back.
Now that left arm of Aurelio, it looks like the elbow is almost to the inside. What's the danger here?
You know, I thought for a moment there was a triangle exposure for Paganini. I don't know if he would be willing to risk kind of that flying triangle, but with Aurelio building up to that elbow like that, there was a moment where he had a shot at it.
24 seconds left. Paganini also working hard. You can see the waterfall from the face.
Reaching over for the guillotine just for a moment to see if there was any purchase there. But right back to the pressure from Mount. And a fist pump to seal the deal here. 5-point victory for Rafael Paganini out of Dream Art. He'll move to the center of the mat to take his hand raise.
And certainly happy with his performance. Absolutely dominant from bell to bell. And you got to feel for Marco here, matched up against a guy who, I talked about this with you before we went live on broadcast. It felt like he was being given an opportunity here, but that he was maybe being fed to Paganini a little bit.
Yeah, and Paganini is in his athletic prime. He's the kind of athlete that is competing on every big
O grande
stage as
vencedor
often as
dessa luta,
possible. It's
parabéns,
just a
Rafael
little bit of a mismatch here,
Paganini.
but Aurelio did a good job of kind of staying in the pocket. Just looks like he fell to a little bit of the athletic conditioning of Paganini.
Vamos assistir os melhores momentos do telão.
Show of
Bora
respect
acompanhar.
between these two. Let's take a look at some of the moments, and it started off with Marco on
Entregando o
top,
troféu,
but very quickly Paganini established that this was his matchup.
That was probably Aurelio's best moment of the fight, was that takedown to stop Paganini's score. But once Paganini got working, it was very hard for Aurelio to get back. Even when he got back to retaining his guard, just these kind of desperate attempts at the leg, which ultimately got his guard passed. And with the guard pass in place, very difficult for Aurelio to get back. Paganini proceeding to mount and then just breaking down the defenses of Aurelio.
And just transitioning from the back to the mount, all of these openings being given, and you definitely see the excitement, the happiness from Rafael Paganini. Do you feel like he left a submission on the mat tonight?
Tough to say. I think he was probably a little too much conviction for that pass, and when he got to mount, he was just a little too focused in maybe on maintaining the position and looking for that arm triangle. There were opportunities for potentially back exposure or potentially a triangle, but you know, with a 5-point advantage, you don't want to hand the match back to somebody who you're controlling and on top of. I think probably just taking the win was the smart call for Paganini there.
Well, more than capable of taking the win, as we put another one of our super fights in the books. And coming up next, we have another one of our big super fights, Giovanna Jara and Tayani coming out to the mat tonight. This is a fun one, a rematch of their super fight at the Abu Dhabi Extreme Challenge last year, where Tayani won that one by decision.
This is a great match, and a match I think we'll see more and more often. Giovanna Jara just now entering into the black belt ranks, and Tayani has been there for a very long time, but is one of the most formidable talents at super heavyweight and in the absolute division. Giovanna Jara has been a promising purple and brown belt for her last couple of years, so I expect to see this matchup quite frequently, but this will be another good installment of this match.
It's been a good night so far, and we have that matchup coming up to you in just a couple of moments. We'll be right back with Giovanna and Tayani. First, don't forget WNO 26 Friday, February 7th from the hangar at the OC Fairgrounds in Costa Mesa, California. Get your tickets right now, tickets.flowsports.tv, or watch that right here live on FloGrappling.
Eu concordo 100%. Eu tenho a característica de chamar para guarda. Alô, obrigado. É algo que sempre fez parte do meu jogo, mas, cara, hoje em dia, meu jogo é domínio, meu jogo é finalização. Quem quiser acompanhar minhas estatísticas pode ver que eu tenho 66% de índice de finalização. A guarda é só um jeito de chegar nos meus domínios, mas ficou claro hoje, eu passei 2 vezes, eu montei, enfim, não tem lutador no alto nível que é unidimensional, a gente tem que saber fazer tudo, e eu me encaixo nisso.
E nessas composições e nessas movimentações, você treinou com o John Danaher, que é o treinador do Meregali e do Gordon Ryan. Eu vi ali um desenho do Mother's Milk, tô enganado?
Ah, tá enganado, eu tava tentando...
Bora lá, gente. Oitava luta, então, dessa noite, BJJ Stars. Bem-vindos ao maior evento de lutas casadas do planeta. Vambora! Essa luta é oferecimento Reebok Brasil, representando a equipe
And
francês.
we are back with
Bem-vinda,
our
Giovanna
next
Jara.
matchup. Giovanna Jara and Tayani Porfirio. This is going to be a fun one between two big, powerful women.
Giovanna Jara of Fratries has been in her colored belt run one of the most promising up-and-coming colored belts. Now at black belt, she got it after the 2023 World Championships. She did not compete at Worlds. She injured her knee, pretty severe injury, and then after that spent some extra time off the mat during her pregnancy and the birth of her child. Now she is back full-time to competing and has not competed very often as a black belt. She made her debut last month at IBJJF's The Crown, but looking to get that belt and the experience busy. And this match against one of the best female super heavyweights in the business, Tayani Porfirio, going to be a huge test for her.
Tayani Porfirio, her run in 2017-2018 was insanely dominant, getting first at Worlds in both weight and absolute in back-to-back years, first at Euros in weight and absolute back-to-back years, winning Pans in 2017. This was an unbelievable run, and of course an unfortunate break from the sport for a few years for Tayani, but you talk about two players who are coming back and both firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, they both look like they're ready to return to top form, top of their respective games. And the super heavyweight division is in need of some real talent, as the reigning queen of jiu-jitsu, Gabriele Pisagna, is just begging for a challenger. She's had a couple great matches with Tayani. I think she'll very soon have a couple great matches with Giovanna, but this division is in need of somebody to come up and take on the queen.
And these two, you talk about being up at this high weight class. Tayani Porfirio is just frightening with the size and strength that she puts on her competitors.
You know, one thing that people don't often realize is just how good and athletic and flexible Tayani's guard can be. So the looks may be deceiving a little bit in that, yes, she has some phenomenal pressure and some phenomenal passing, but she can do some of the more intricate and flexible kind of techniques that the best guard players can pull off.
And now trying to figure out what the grip plan is going to be. First exchange went Tayani's way, up on the scoreboard, as you can see. Jara, of course, has had her own runs at Worlds and Pans. Of course, that was in colored belts, where she won Worlds in both absolute and weight as a blue belt in 21, a purple belt in 22. Earned her brown belt from Misaki Jens in 22 after her double gold at Worlds. And then it was her mother who promoted her to black belt after she changed her gym.
Both competitors here getting a passivity call, so they'll both incur one penalty. They've got to be careful here because the BJJ Stars penalty system is just a little bit different than the more traditional IBJJF system. As opposed to 4 penalties equaling a disqualification, it is only 3 penalties until DQ. So second penalty gives your opponent 2 points. The third penalty means you are done for the day. So they got to be careful. Tayani with a big takedown there to score, and Giovanna right into the closed guard where she'll get to work.
Opening up that lead by 4 now is Tayani, who's been competing at black belt since 2016 after winning Worlds and Euros as a brown belt.
Closed guard is a good strategy here for Giovanna if she's trying to get into the leg attacks where she excels, but don't put it past Tayani to get into the Sao Paulo pass, trying to pass from within the closed guard. It is rare but not entirely impossible to pass from this position, and it's something that Tayani likes quite a bit.
Tayani looking to get high, get heavy, searching maybe for an inside grip on the collar. And Jara is trying to break her down.
Giovanna looking to open up the lapels, potentially trying to wrap around an arm or wrap around the posture here and get some better control of Tayani.
And doing a so far successful job of controlling that posture, but as time is beginning to wane, 4.5 minutes left to work, Giovanna does need to find a way to score.
A big over-the-back grip is interesting. I'm wondering if she's looking to pass the collar around the back or create some distance between the elbows and the knees to set up arm attacks. The downside of that big over-the-top grip, which Giovanna has now let go, is it'll be very hard for the referees to penalize the top person when the bottom person is holding them in that stalling-esque position.
Legs opening, switching for Giovanna. Tayani nodding at some instructions from her coach.
Giovanna now has a little bit better control of the arms and the cross collar. That's the separation she probably is looking for, the distance between the elbows and the ribs, right, to try and attack the neck, attack the arms, attack the head. And now getting a 2-on-1 here on the far side, going to start to build for that armbar. Tayani just sniffs it out.
Approaching 3 minutes left in this super fight. Tayani holding the advantage on points here and overall in their career matchups.
It looks like what Giovanna wants is to dominate Tayani's left arm and just take one attack there to try and make something happen. Use the armbar to force a scramble. But Tayani finally breaks clear of that closed guard and is starting to get her pressure down.
A very tight grip on the seat with that right hand. Working the legs up high is Jara.
And now he's got some stack pressure. It's a good move here for Tayani to put the pressure on Giovanna, but it's also going to start to create some openings for that closed guard to come back in.
Referee is getting the detritus out of the way. Let these two continue. 2 minutes remaining. And back into the closed guard, just as you said.
And right back into attack on that left arm. She's looking for that cross grip over the top. Even that's what she's doing. She's feeding that lapel around the tricep to create a little bit of a reinforced grip so that when she attacks the arm, she has a good bite on the tricep, and Tayani, in theory, won't be able to rip it free.
And Tayani trying to smash, create reasons to let go, and she does. Right back to that grip, though, is Giovanna. 90 seconds left.
She's looking to switch arms, but I think it may be a smarter idea to switch strategies entirely. Tayani is not letting her arms break contact with Giovanna. She is extending her legs. That's maybe where I would have expected Giovanna to go with this, is to create leg exposure here and start to attack underneath Tayani's legs. This might be her best opportunity of the match, though, with 1 minute left. Has her legs climbed up, but again, Tayani uses that to open the guard.
Can Jara find magic in the final 50 seconds? Tayani able to get the pass.
And that, in all likelihood, is going to kind of close the lid on Giovanna's opportunities here. Tayani puts another 3 on the board, now leading by 7. Giovanna's got 30 seconds to make something happen here, and against somebody as technically dominant and as heavy as Tayani, it's going to be really hard to make something happen here.
And we've seen a couple back-to-back just very dominant top game performances from two strong competitors. Rafael Paganini doing it against Marco Aurelio, and Tayani coming out here in very similar playbook. This one played a lot in the closed guard, but much like Rafael, wearing down, making her opponent get tired, and then finding chances to score in those exhausted moments.
Yeah, and Giovanna had a really smart strategy to use that lapel to try and tie up Tayani's arm. She had a couple good opportunities to attack that arm, but it looked like Tayani's posture and pressure was just enough to kind of eliminate any real threats by Giovanna.
Vamos então ao
And
resultado. Eu
Tayani
queria que vocês fizessem
now will move
barulho
her
pra essa
record
luta. Vamos
against
fazer, gente,
Giovanna
barulho.
Jar to
Porque
2-0,
são duas mulheres que representaram demais.
and
Duas
the comeback tour
mamães
continues.
que fizeram dessa luta altíssimo nível, muito técnica, muita habilidade.
And I think I can understand that bit of Portuguese, very technical. That one translates fairly well, and that would be the best description here by Tayani's performance tonight. Just clean, simple, technical.
Very patient, very precise. She didn't exert any energy in the closed guard when she didn't have to. When Giovanna was working her setups, Tayani just waited for her moment and found the same moment twice. It was when Giovanna was going to solidify that attack on the arm that Tayani decided, okay, now's my time to pass the guard. The first time, she just scored an advantage, but the second time, she finished her way past the guard, scored the final 3 points of the match. But it all really started with Tayani scoring 4 points early on 2 big takedowns.
And I think that's the story of the match that is easy to forget because we spent so much time in this position, in this closed guard position, is how much stronger and how much more solid in the legs Tayani felt when they were in those stand-up exchanges.
Right, and it was in those standing exchanges where she was able to kind of project her weight around and take control of the match. That this closed guard, if the score is even, is a way different position, right? Because Giovanna has to be a little bit desperate here and doesn't have the time really to be patient and set up these arms. She has to make openings maybe a little bit earlier than she would have liked to, and in both those openings, that's where Tayani has her moments.
And just clean, simple passes, smashing the entire way, and the relief turns into an exuberance from Tayani Porfirio, and from Tayani, who absolutely put on the kind of performance that you expect given her long-time history at this division.
Yeah, and as I mentioned kind of towards the beginning of this match, the super heavyweight division is desperate for a legitimate threat to the 8-time world champion Gabriele Pisagna. Tayani has been in that position where she's a 4-time world champion who has been at the top of the world. She's had a couple of great matches with Gabriele Pisagna already, but the division needs the likes of Giovanna and Tayani and athletes who are at that peak level to really kind of create an opening. Otherwise, Gabriele will sit in that position and become probably the first 12, 15, 20-time world champion. She's only 22 years old and has already earned 8 titles. That division needs some movement, and great to see it coming in the return of Tayani Porfirio and the entrance of Giovanna Jara.
Well, from what you saw tonight, Tayani coming out on top now, second time in a row, where do you look at her game relative to the current champ?
They're very similar in kind of build and style. I think the thing that Gabriele has had on Giovanna is just those kind of quick movements. She won, I think 2021 the crown off of just a big collar drag in a very much mutual match, like very neutral match. It was just that one movement that Gabriele can pull out. But that is saying that Tayani is able to survive and contend in matches where almost the rest of the world doesn't make it past the 3-minute mark.
And that 3-minute mark, obviously, a key thing to get past, because otherwise you are eliminated from the competition. And speaking of eliminations, we've taken 4 of our competitors out of our featherweight Grand Prix, but we are getting ready to move into our semifinals, where we have what you'd think were the 4 favorites on the night. But the big question to answer is, can any of these other 3 take on a guy who I don't think he broke the idea of a sweat in Meyram Maquine?
Yeah, but that's going to be interesting, right? Because, yes, he's maybe a little bit less tired than the other 3, but the other 3 are warm now. So does that 10-second submission that Meyram hit come back to haunt him? We're going to find out. He's got a semifinal coming up very soon, and yeah, I'll be curious to see if he's going to throw another kind of high-flying maneuver out there, or if he wants to break a sweat now and get ready for the final.
Well, I have to imagine maybe he's in the back getting those sweats moving, getting those limbs limber and those muscles warmed up for what's going to be a hotly anticipated semifinal against Kennedy Maciel in just a little bit. Before that, though, we're going to have Fabricio Andrey, and man, this really fun matchup for our other semifinal, which I think is going to be maybe a barn burner this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these featherweights really just dialed in. It's 4 of the best featherweights in the world. Couldn't ask for a better GP than this.
Well, let's go ahead and take a moment. We'll be right back with the semifinals of our Featherweight Grand Prix.
Estilo spa tem de ser forte. Beba com moderação.
É isso, gente. Fortes emoções. Agora a gente começa a dar aquela funilada, né? Quem passou, passou. Quem não passou, não passa mais. Então vamos para o nosso primeiro duelo. GP dos Penas, valendo a premiação de R$100 mil. Vamos fazer barulho para o nosso, primeiro semifinalista. Ele, que é da equipe da Allianz. Vem pra cá, Fabricio Andrey.
And Hokage making his way back to the mat for our semifinal matchup with Diego Sodre. And it was a fun first round against Malachi Edmond, but not one that really felt like it tested the limits of Fabricio's skill set.
Fabricio Andrey and Diego Sodre have a lengthy rivalry. They're friendly. They're both from Manaus, and they spent a lot of time with each other, but neither one likes to lose to the other. It has been at points, kind of bitter, not necessarily between the athletes, but the situations, let's say, have been bitter. So neither one is going to want to just roll over in this match. I expect a really technical exchange of grips and fireworks from the get-go.
Well, 2-2 overall, the split between these players in their career. But if you're going to say who gets the better of this one, you have to go with Diego, who both of those wins are at Worlds, a semifinal victory in 2023 and a quarterfinal victory in 2024. And if you're choosing when to get the best of a rivalry, Worlds is probably the place to do it.
And I was commenting before about Diego Sodre's kind of strategic style of play, right? He doesn't make that many movements unnecessarily. That doesn't have to, but Hokage brings those movements out of him, and whether it's because of his style or the rivalry itself, you see some of the most movement from Sodre in any of his matches against Fabricio.
Reminder for those of you who might not know the faces, Fabricio here in the white gi, Diego Sodre rocking the blue this evening.
We have a race to guard, and Sodre is the one who will keep it. Fabricio now on top. And yeah, pay attention to how he addresses Sodre's grips. He does not want Diego Sodre to have a hand of his collar at any point in this match. So pay attention to what Fabricio is doing with his left hand. He will constantly be monitoring the right hand of Diego Sodre.
And we have not seen as much hand fighting tonight as maybe you might expect. A lot of people maybe a little more content with the grips, and as you said so far, Fabricio, not for a second.
Fabricio's had enough Sodre experience to understand that a Sodre with a collar grip is a dangerous, dangerous Sodre.
Diego Sodre trying to get deep in with those legs.
Fabricio really likes that wrecking ball pass. We may see it again where he stomps behind the knee and tries to throw the leg by. But just the grip strength of Diego Sodre is really difficult to deal with. If he gets his feet on and his hands on, they just pull in opposite directions in a way that creates so much tension and creates opportunities for sweeps like this.
You just saw the ankle able to elevate. And Diego Sodre getting 2 points early. And now he'll try to enter. Talk to me about Fabricio's preferred guard game.
Generally, he likes anything where he can get a triangle, so I'd expect to see a little bit more of this collar sleeve, right? He wants to be in a position where he can elevate his partner's hands to the mat, elevate his opponent's hands to the mat. So a lot of pulling. You'll see that Sodre has this kind of really strong posture now. He knows he doesn't want his head over Fabricio's hips. That exposes him for the triangle. He's going to want to stay upright because Fabricio is going to want to elevate hands to the mat.
Notice that Sodre has also done a good job of taking the throw game of Hokage completely out of the conversation.
Fabricio doing a good job of starting to wrestle up, creating hooks, and again circling his feet on the inside. And the grip fight continues here. Controlling that right hand of Sodre the whole time, keeping that foot on. That's what's going to give him that triangle opportunity if he sees it.
Approaching the 4-minute mark. 2-point advantage for Diego Sodre. Although if any scoring can happen for Fabricio, he does have that advantage from the beginning of the match. And it feels like we haven't seen Andre really try to work or take out opportunities to get back to his feet.
It may be that he knows if he comes up, he's going to end up back in this position anyway, right? Sodre will generally follow him up and either take top position, which is not great for Fabricio, or take bottom position, which means Fabricio needs to reestablish his grips, reestablish his pressure, and take a risk at walking into that collar sleeve guard.
And maybe the most ill-timed beer advert in world history, as the 2 points for Fabricio scored with the position change. And this is where that advantage comes into play with 3 minutes left.
Now again, looking at that kind of wrecking ball pass where he steps his foot behind the knee to create some extra tension in the grip.
That collar grip now, as you talked about, high and deep for Sodre.
And this is where you'll sometimes see the pace of the match change. When Sodre has a grip like that, even when he's behind on the scoreboard, he's going to try and wait for an opportunity where he can score 2 at the very end of the match and not give Fabricio a chance to score. Now, if there's anybody who knows that, it's Fabricio Andrey, who's been caught out like that a couple of times. So he's going to try and keep this ball moving, keep the momentum going, and not let Sodre take a moment to relax and think.
Trying to drag Sodre flat there for a moment. Now back to 1.
Sodre with an interesting lapel grip here.
High on the collar right hand, low on the lapel left hand. And just trying to power out of that. Fabricio does it.
He's going to have to use that grip, though. Especially if he starts to tangle his leg up. See, he's got a penalty for that grip. BJJ Stars is very vigilant about making sure that the guard player with the lapel grip, where the lapel is wrapped around a foot, uses it or incurs a penalty. So you'll see now Sodre took his leg out of that position. It's no longer a lapel-style guard. But if he wraps it around his leg again, he's got 10 seconds to use it to let it go.
And of course, that second penalty, much worse than the first. Fabricio jumping over, trying for the pass. And these advantages and penalties might end up being the story with 50 seconds left. Diego now. Is he looking for that last second score, but can he find it?
You can hear Feijão right now screaming at Sodre to make something happen, and Fabricio now incurs his own penalty for hanging onto his grips and not making anything happen with them. 20 seconds left to go, and Sodre is going to start to get desperate here, take a couple of risks. This is where he's dangerous, though, is these risky kind of last-minute movements. He somehow always finds a way to end up on top.
An advantage for Sodre puts this very close. This is razor thin, 3 seconds left. But that's going to end with Fabricio Andrey squeaking one out over Diego Sodre.
You know, Fabricio has lost in so many situations like that with not just Diego, but his brother Alex Sodre as well, where they have gone down to just what happens in the last couple seconds. And I'm sure Fabricio feels very good about taking a win over somebody who has handed him some of the maybe most devastating moments of his career.
Indeed. You lose twice at Worlds to a guy, and one thing you want us to do it back on a big stage, and in this featherweight Grand Prix, he will now go and await the winner of Meyram Maquine and Kennedy Maciel. So from one very difficult, grindy match into two very different potential matchups.
You know, I'm really interested in the Kennedy matchup. That would be a particular a rematch from the PANS final at 2024 this year. We expected them to hit at Worlds. Both Kennedy and Fabricio lost to Alex and Diego Sodre in the eighth finals, right? So right before the quarterfinals, we did not get a chance to see that match, but they were kind of jawing at each other before that match happened. They said it was fun and games, but they were both looking like, you know, sending each other signs across the match, like, bring it, you know, I got you next. So excited to see if we see that one, how that goes. But really, Meyram Maquine could be trouble for either of these two athletes. Kennedy Maciel coming up next in the next round of the semifinals, or if he makes it to the final, Fabricio Andrey.
Now, looking back at some of the replays from this one, do you think, Corey, that in some of the moments where Diego got the advantage, where he had switched the position, he had put Fabricio's back on the mat, we saw him kind of back out. Do you think that he potentially left some points on the board not pushing it as much, or was this just a calculated game plan that didn't come to fruition?
This is the way that Diego Sodre tends to win, right? So I think, you know, if his style were entirely different, he may have engaged a little bit more, but that opens up different risks for, especially against somebody like Fabricio, where taking those risks can end up in really hot water. So Diego played the game he knows how to play. Diego played the game that often wins for him. Just one of those days where Fabricio, I think, had the better grips early, had the better strategy early, and knew how to untangle that web that has caught him so many times, beating that collar grip.
When you talk about, you know, risk-averse play, sometimes just putting your money in the market and letting the market rise versus betting on individual stocks. One can win, one can lose. Today it was Fabricio Andrey taking the win this time with some of those bigger moments. But now we get to what I think is the dream matchup on the card of the night. Meyram Maquine and Kennedy Maciel in a semifinal matchup. This obviously could be a final in any portion of the featherweight world of jiu-jitsu.
Probably should be, probably will be a final in the coming years, as Meyram seems to be interested in locking into the featherweight division, and Kennedy has been the featherweight to beat for most of the year. So really this is the tale of the featherweight who won everything but worlds versus the featherweight world champion. And here he is, the featherweight world champion, Meyram Maquine, taking the walkout. Just looks as amped up as I've ever seen him.
And this is one of those fun ones. You know, one thing about competitive jiu-jitsu is most of the time when you compete, you don't get a walkout. You don't get the big lights. You don't get the production value. You get one mat out of dozens. The crowd is pretty far away by comparison, or maybe a mixture of different things. You're in a gym, whereas here you get the bright lights, you get the feeling of it being something special, and it seems like Meyram is enjoying and feeling that.
I'm sure you can tell just by the look in his eyes, the look on his face. Meyram Maquine lives for the lights.
Kennedy Maciel. I don't believe that I remember any times that these two have met, and it seems almost shocking.
I can't think of a time that they've fought, and a lot of that could be that Mahon generally competes at light featherweight. Now we've seen him at other GPs where he's fought up, but it's not very common. He tends to do really well in those events where he has to fight up in featherweight, but we don't see it all that often. So this is, if I'm being honest, the featherweight final I was expecting to see this year, but as we mentioned, Kennedy got caught out early on in the featherweight rounds. These guys looking to get right into
Oh,
action.
do not expect this to be lots of stalling and Kennedy jumping in guard.
Smart strategy by Kennedy, who I'm sure wanted nothing to do with the judo skills of Mahon.
Well, it's not just the judo skills of Maquine, it's also the submissions that happen inside of that judo,
Absolutely.
which is so frightening. Nothing worse than flying through the air and then discovering that your arm is trapped.
The interesting thing, though, about the way that Mahon passes, the way he plays top position, the way he plays bottom position, is he fights grips as if he's still standing. There's no sitting and thinking about the grip and staring and trying to figure out which grip break or which grip exchange is the best. It's get your hands off of me so I can put my hands on you at all times.
And, you know, when you look at some of the movement of Maquine, it almost feels like a breakdancer with some of the hip versus upper body control.
He's got phenomenal movement. Really, the kind of person that could be athletic in just about anything he tried. We're just lucky as jiu-jitsu fans that it was jiu-jitsu that found him.
And only one loss in 2024 thus far for Maquine, and that is to a much heavier man we'll be seeing later tonight, and Jansen, an absolute at Worlds.
And I have to say, that was not a decisive loss. He put Jansen to the test. Jansen, for what it's worth, competed in the medium heavyweight division at Worlds, which he took second in. He also took second in the absolute division. Jansen, medium heavy is around 185, and Mahon was competing at featherweight, which is 154. So at minimum, a 30-pound weight gap between the two.
And that does tie the 27-year-old record of Hoyler Gracie for the lightest weight to medal in absolute at Worlds. And you talk about being in rarefied air, and that's one of those ones that you love to have on your mantelpiece.
Absolutely.
Maquine looking for the pass.
He's got a good leg drag position now. He's going to start to load Kennedy's leg up onto the lap. Smart to stay patient here, though. We can often see Mahon doing a lot more moving than he needs to, which creates openings, but when he's got it, he slows down just like this, keeping the pressure on Kennedy, making him suffer as he looks for exposure either of the back if he wants to thread his right leg in, or the pass if he pulls Kennedy's left leg up onto his left hip.
Margins are thin right now, just the advantage point for Maquine as we enter the final 4 minutes of our semifinal.
He's got a big crossface there too. These grips, he doesn't want to get too uncomfortable with these grips. Both of these grips are holding him in exactly the position he needs to be. Kennedy, you can see, is just hoping that Mahon makes some space.
This one has slowed down a fair bit. And referee getting different points of view to decide what's fair and what's not. You have to imagine that Fabricio is backstage watching this one closely.
I'm always curious where the referee will go if they decide to penalize either of these guys, right? Because sure, Mahon is hanging on to the grips and maybe not advancing as quickly as he could be, but Kennedy's the one in the position who needs to get out of the position. So it's not always clearly defined who the onus is on to move, but I like to see the referees sometimes stay out of these exchanges altogether and let the athletes figure it out for themselves. Because it's so intricate, right? There are 4 or 5 battles going on at once here between Mahon's left hand and his right hand, Kennedy's head, Kennedy's right leg, his left leg. You really can't move all that much without making a dramatic error for either party.
And starting to move a little bit on the legs. Just as you say that, Maquine stepping over. And now we're in a very different world.
Good job of preventing the 50-50 on the way out, but Kennedy might just be wrapping up a lapel between and around a couple of different limbs here.
2 points advantage for Meyram with 2 minutes left.
Kennedy now looking to come out to the back, but looks like we'll get a wardrobe adjustment here.
And a penalty. So time will hold for a moment.
I could be wrong. It looks like that penalty went to Kennedy for being inside the 50-50 guard and maintaining control of the lapel. So you can have a high collar grip, but if the lapel is stripped out of the belt and you hang on to it, even if you're not wrapping around a limb in 50-50, that is a time limit technique. You can only use that grip for 10 seconds without using it.
And currently 2 penalties listed for Maciel. We'll see if they correct that. Because, of course, that would be points for Maquine. And Maciel trying to really work that grip on the right hand, on the left hand.
Mahon using Kennedy's desire for that grip to hop over nearly past the guard.
And the athletic work.
He's just so explosive in his way of switching side to side.
Maciel smartly getting to his knees, negating that opportunity.
And using it to lasso up. Kennedy has a shot at close guard here if he wants it, but Mahon does a good job of getting his right leg up the center. That De La Riva guard just nothing doing. Kennedy's tried that De La Riva a couple times, and every time Mahon just hops his knees over and past the guard.
30 seconds left, advantage Maquine. One mistake from either person could secure this. Maciel looking for a desperation move. Can he search for anything? Can he find something?
That's a big grip for Mahon here at the end to keep Kennedy drawn out, stop him from coming up. Controlling that foot makes it very difficult for Kennedy to put his foot to the mat, which he's in all likelihood going to need to get up.
And that's going to be victory. Very different from his first outing for Maquine. Seconds it took to put Kleber Souza away. This one goes the full distance, no points scored, just sweat left out there on the mat.
Yeah, and a lot of respect from Mahon for Kennedy. He knows how dangerous Kennedy is from his guard, and was still doing a lot of work to make Kennedy be the one reacting. Mahon was initiating the whole time, but really not committing to anything he didn't need to, just racking up the advantages, taking the lead, and eventually taking the win.
And it's for such a high-flying and explosive athlete, taking a victory like this one that's so methodical, so slow, and doing it in a way against a guy like Maciel where being up there, being elevated, making those big moves opens up so many opportunities. And it's, again, you talk about the high-flying armbar in the first matchup, and then this one winning just on advantage here in our semifinal.
And there are different ways to win in that strategic style, right? Like even though Maquine racked up the advantages and scored that way, he was still moving in ways that most people don't move. Look at just kind of the redirections, the dynamic pulls, the side-to-side movement, the way he gets his head inside here. He's constantly moving. That's his style, regardless of whether he's playing the strategic game or playing the blink and you miss it submission game.
And Maciel had a couple of interesting moments, but did feel maybe a bit confounded by Maquine. And you have to wonder if he's in the back of his mind going, is this what I'm looking at and dealing with in 2025.
Yeah, this is the world champion. Mahan came out of the light featherweight division last year, entering the featherweight division only for Worlds of 2024, and put a stamp on the division real quick. Kind of took complete ownership of a division which, for I believe it's a decade straight, has not had a repeat champion.
And you look at the dexterity of Maquine being kind of elevating, putting himself in some dangerous positions, but the flexibility and strength in the core and the ability to get the limbs out where he needed. There were a couple moments where it looked like you might have openings for Maciel to reverse the story. Instead, Maquine able to maintain that top position.
Yeah, Mahan just took control, exerted his control throughout the match, and never really gave Kennedy an opportunity to get going.
Didn't get going at all, but we are going to our finals later tonight as we have those trips already booked, but we still have 2 more super fights coming your way in just a little bit. We'll be right back with the first of those in just a couple minutes.
Collecting checks. Next, catching flicks at the Cinema X. So boy meets girl, your typical love story, but this boy loves girl, so baby, I'm so sorry. From this and forth, of course, put no one before me. Just trusting your love with the stud from the Sagnoli. I swear that I love you.
So a little review of the action on the evening as we had some nice stuff up top with the blue belts getting their debut, some super fights, and of course a ton of this featherweight Grand Prix. And as a longtime featherweight competitor and black belt yourself, talk to me a bit about the styles and stuff that we've seen tonight and what you've really enjoyed.
Yeah, kind of a huge dynamic of styles, right? We saw that first flying submission from Meyram coming out with the takedown sequence straight into the armbar. We saw some of the more calculated passing game of Fabricio Andrey, some of the calculated guard play of Diego Sodre. Really a little bit of all of the things that make featherweight so fun, so dynamic, so thoughtful when it has to be thoughtful. A really good kind of demonstration of exactly the range that these featherweights have.
It's one of the interesting things about jiu-jitsu compared to other combat sports is a lot of the time it's the big heavyweights who draw all the eyeballs in boxing or mixed martial arts or kickboxing. You want to see those big knockout moments. But jiu-jitsu, it almost feels like the script is flipped a bit, where some of these lighter weights maybe get some of the bigger attention because of the moments like that one.
Right, and I think the difference is you see the knockouts at heavyweight because of the big heavy hands. You see the submissions often at lightweight, middleweight, featherweight because the athletes can move in ways that sometimes the bigger weights, the heavier weights can't move. Now, the well-moving heavyweights have some of the best submissions you can possibly see, but you see it more often in featherweight, just like you see the big knockouts more often in boxing.
Of course, we're going to be getting to the featherweight final in a little bit, but before that, we do have some heavier matchups in our two remaining super fights on the night, and the first one on our docket. Jaime Canuto and Peter Frank coming out for what should be a fun one.
Just a crazy dynamic of styles here. Jaime Canuto has just such precise technical jiu-jitsu. Every grip, every movement matters. There is no wasted movement. Peter Frank is somehow almost all wasted or wastable movement, but you never know what he's going to do. It's flying triangles, flying arm bars, flying guard passes, flying who knows, let's just see what happens. So, going to be interesting to see if Jaime can be the one to control Peter Frank or if Peter Frank is going to do what Peter Frank does and just jump all over the place until something comes out of it.
I was watching his matchup on UFC Fight Pass recently where his opponent had him around the waist from the back and he was dancing even in that moment. So I don't know. I don't think he would take a birth or a funeral seriously. This is a guy who's always just having fun in every single moment.
I fully expect to see him skateboard down the ramp, dance his way across the mat, and start a complete party before the action gets going.
You know, he didn't skateboard last time. He came out with it, held it in the air, and then I think was like, you know what, maybe I'll take it easy and not injure myself on the way to the mat tonight. Here's hoping that there's no injuries, but that he does jump on those four wheels on his way back. We, of course, did last see him here at BJJ Stars 12, which was a very exciting matchup.
That was a really dramatic matchup. He, as always, just kind of has this energy about him, this I don't care what happens, I'm going to have fun doing jiu-jitsu, that can get under people's skin. It can be very agitating to be on the other side of that. When your opponent is having fun, you think I need to maybe try a little harder to make them have a little bit less fun. It's going to be hard to do that against Peter Frank.
Oh, that was the match against Celso Vinicius, where he had the kind of the high-flying show and got advantage, behind on advantage, had a late throw. They had to go to replay to decide where to award the points, but it was Peter Frank taking that one in the end. This is the oldest matchup on our books tonight. Jaime coming in at 35 years old, Peter Frank at 39, so collectively approaching the century mark between these two jiu-jitsu competitors.
And it's for the Masters title, so for the competitors over 30 title here at BJJ Stars.
It does feel brutal when you start hearing Masters being referred to as over 30. It makes you feel like a much older man than you are on the books. You know, you talk about sort of the alternative sports backgrounds of these two. Peter, of course, with his famous skateboard. Jaime, a surfer initially. His hometown known for being a surfing destination, and he eventually realized that he kind of reached the top level he could reach as a surfing competitor, and that's when he looked for something new and found jiu-jitsu.
There's a funny kind of interplay between surfing and jiu-jitsu that so many of the top level jiu-jiteros have. You talk about Marcus Buchecha being one of the most famous, just lovers of all things surf, but also a 10-time jiu-jitsu world champion. Here's Peter Frank doing what Peter Frank does, having a good time with it. He just wants everybody to have fun.
He certainly has a blast, and this is a guy who, has developed quite a following online with his social media and with his lessons that he teaches. And here it comes. You see, maybe he was tempering it a bit with the foot drag, but does get on the skateboard. And he's really enjoyed this stage of his career where he's become a personality and has a fan base and people who come up and say hello to them and want to get his autograph. And that's a great thing for a competitor entering into his Grandmasters phase of his career.
And I think Peter Frank should be the example for a lot of the younger athletes that come out and say, well, you're having a Masters World Championship on BJJ Stars. These guys don't compete with the best of us. How do they keep getting the spotlight? Well, you have the energy, the attitude, the personality that Peter Frank does. That makes things happen, makes people want to watch you, makes people care about who you are, what you're doing, and you get to be doing this on BJJ Stars.
And Peter Frank already having a bit of fun. We've seen that before where he kind of jerks his head back almost like a boxer to dodge collar grips.
And what he wants to do is make Jaime overreach for a collar. Because if somebody takes their arm and extends it out in front of him, he's going to go jumping on that arm like a dog on a bone.
And now Jaime gets the collar and jumps guard. Referee penalizing them both for not engaging quickly enough.
And Jaime will score 2 for that sweep. I had the pleasure of warming up in Brazil at Brasileiros with Jaime Canudo. He and I did some drilling in the back, and the sheer precision of his grips left me completely baffled. He was going into 7, 8, 9 step techniques without a single thought or movement or regrip. Everything was exactly where he wanted it, and he was doing complex 8-step sweeps in a single second that completely blew my mind.
And I'm sitting next to a black belt here, folks, and that's one of the big things I think that, Corey, you'd agree with me on, is that there are black belts and there are black belts.
Took the words right out of my mouth. There are the everyday in your gym black belts, and then there are the Jaime Canudos of the world who just have jiu-jitsu in their bones.
And searching for a leg initially was Peter Frank, and now more holding on to it to prevent a pass than a legitimate attack.
It was a great way, a great move for Jaime, stepping over the head to get into this position where he's threatening the back take. He's technically trapped in this leg entanglement, but he's definitely got the advantage of hip position here. His hips are higher. He's going to start turning that right knee of his to face out, or turning the other direction, backstepping again to threaten the back. Now, Peter Frank does have a quite mean footlock. We don't see it all that often because he's so often flying into the arms and the triangles, but his footlock bite is pretty severe.
And leg now starting to get a little bit deeper. And there he goes, puts it back on the outside.
Recently on the BJJ Star stage, he finished one of these same style of footlocks against Kyle Almeida. It's a really, really nasty break. And he's got the Aoki position, the heel on the ribs and on the sternum, which puts just a tremendous amount of torque on the ankle.
You can see that ankle flexing a little bit there. But able to bring himself back in is Canudo.
Peter's going to go right back on the attack here on the ankle.
Peter Frank didn't start training jiu-jitsu until he was 24 years old, so it really is astounding to see someone create a career like this one when he started training kind of at a similar age to maybe a lot of Americans of our generation began.
That's part of what makes him such a fan favorite, such an inspiration, is, most of the top level black belts the top level adult black belts especially have been training since they were, 9, 10 years old, if not younger. And Peter starting at 24 and being able to compete at this caliber on this big stage is just it's very inspiring to see what you can do if you kind of commit yourself and build the brand, build the personality that Peter has built.
Still looking for that ankle.
Felipe Andrew is competing in our next match. Felipe and Peter Frank were training partners up until pretty recently, and Felipe Andrew, for my money, has one of the best ankle locks in the business. I would not be surprised if they've been trading secrets on this technique for a long, long time.
And if you're an old jiu-jitsu head, you remember those stories where people would talk about what the Gracies would teach you and what they wouldn't teach you, as far as those in-depth secrets. And there's always been a mythos of that next level stuff that only gets shared to a select few.
I think those secrets are more or less out now, but there's knowing how to do it and being able to do it against a athlete like Jaime Canuto.
2.5 minutes left, and the point still holding for Jaime. Peter really committing to the idea that he's going to get a submission to take this victory. And he has put a lot of stress on that ankle. You've certainly seen it flex, but just hasn't found that perfect angle to get the finish yet.
Jaime now has his knee out, and now is an opportunity to take the back as long as he doesn't leave his ankle floating in there. But Peter still with a pretty severe bite on that ankle, starting to create some distance. Doesn't have full control of the leg and the knee, but he's going to use this right hand grip he has on the knee to create that torque again.
What does he need to do to adjust to get this finish?
He's got to have a little bit better control of the knee. It looks like he's lost his elbow position as well. When he started this ankle lock attempt, his elbow was deep through. He had a nice high collar grip. That elbow's kind of slipped out in a way that he doesn't have the kind of torque he started with. But if he can reestablish that and get Jaime to sit down, that's his best opportunity.
Approaching the final minute. 2 points and 2 advantage for Jaime.
Peter should get an advantage finally for that ankle lock attempt, but no longer has a grip of the ankle. Going to need to get on top to even the scoreboard.
And maybe arms blown out a little bit after all of that effort.
Jaime looking for a toe hold here, but we're nearly out of bounds.
And Peter trying to drag him back in bounds.
He does score the 2 points despite the fact that we're on the border here.
And this just got interesting.
Smart coaching there by Coach Johnny Lorero to remind the referee that should be 2 points, although it looks like the referees are pulling those points off the board.
You hear some boos from the crowd, not happy with this adjustment. Changing that to advantage.
Johnny Lorero there giving his opinion on how that should have been scored. And Peter with that attempt at a flying attack.
I mean, even I saw that one coming.
Peter Frank's going to do what Peter Frank does. But it gives him an opportunity to go back to the well on that ankle lock and see if he can find an opportunity to score with it.
He's searching. 14 seconds left.
Yeah, but Jaime has such a good cross grip on that knee that he's going to prevent Peter from standing.
7 seconds. Stepping over is Jaime. And does that turn into points?
Not enough time
Didn't
to
hold.
score, I don't think.
Wow.
Just an advantage there. Not enough time left on the clock for him to solidify those 2 points. He'll take the advantage for his efforts, but ultimately not going to amount to anything legitimate on the scoreboard. And Jaime Canuto will take the 2-0 win.
It's a 2-0 win, but it feels like a moral victory for Peter Frank in this one.
Yeah, Peter wants the submission, right? He wants the submission. So attacking an entire match, win or lose, is really what the kind of jiu-jitsu that he wants to display.
And it's hard with any sort of rule set, right, where you're taking something that is combat and turning it into there are points awarded. There's a time constraint, and the question always exists. And if you took all that away and let these guys go until the end, what happens?
Yeah, that's one of those questions, right? That'll never be answered. You know, they might go and have their own little grudge match, their own little role in the back room, but the points drive the match in the way they drive the match. Peter Frank dejected here in not scoring that 2 points.
Yeah, pulling his arm away from the referee, unhappy with not just not scoring those points, but also with the way that they were removed, rubbing him maybe a little extra wrong. And Canuto not celebrating dramatically either, kind of more acknowledging the win rather than celebrating it. And hey, you know what? That wasn't for. Maybe you might be frustrated with the referee. No problem here between these two competitors as he crowns his opponent with what I can only describe as a crown that the Burger King himself would envy.
Here's Fepa Lopes, the owner, the CEO of BJJ Stars, putting the strap on Jaime Canuto. You know, this is a match that's been building since April of 2024. Jaime won his division in the Masters divisions of Brasileiros, and Peter Frank won his division in the Masters divisions of Brasileiros. And they said, you know, there's only one way to really settle this. I won Masters 2, you won Masters 1. This has to happen at BJJ Stars, the only stage in Brazil to handle these two athletes.
And this was the story of much of the fight. Peter Frank searching for that ankle and some significant threatening moments throughout this one.
That ankle lock, especially when it turned into an Aoki lock towards the right about here, looked really severe. You can see the way Jaime is extending his hips into it. That's the kind of reaction you only make when that ankle feels like it's being stretched beyond its limits.
And then some late action as well. And I think we'll get a look in just a moment at the exchange where the points were on and then off the board right here at the edge.
You know,
what are your thoughts seeing that again?
Yeah, it was the right time to come up. Jaime had a toe hold. He's taken his hands off the mat, but just that close to the edge, you have to know that there's a chance of going out of bounds and losing what you've been working on. So always better if you can to pull the match in bounds, indicate to the referee that you're trying to keep this in bounds. That way they may score for fleeing, they may score for the sweep, but allowing that to go out of bounds without any effort to drag it in is always going to be a risk of losing everything, walking home with an advantage only.
And that's what we saw there. The advantage, not enough to give the win to Peter Frank, but of course it was an exciting one to watch, and we talked about that idea of a moral victory. I think both guys walked away having entertained the crowd significantly in this Masters matchup, and that leads us into the, I guess you'd call it the co-main of the night, the penultimate matchup, and we do have this brilliant featherweight final coming very soon, but this next one coming up is a bigger fight, I mean between two bigger guys, but also one that really deserves a marquee spot on this card.
Oh, absolutely. Jansen Gomes is walking into maybe the peak of his career. He won the World Championships in 2023, took silver at the World Championships in 2024, but was on his way toward an absolute title. He broke his ankle in the medium heavyweight final in 2024, meaning he couldn't fight for that absolute final. But going up against somebody like Felipe Andrew, who has just been at the peak of his career for the last couple of years, this is a match between two of the brightest stars in heavyweight jiu-jitsu today.
And Andrew has had a lot of success here at BJJ Stars, and at our 12th edition, won that tournament, going through Leo Lara, Isaki Bahien's, and Anderson Ferreira, and then beating Anderson Muniz here for the 5th time in his last outing here at BJJ Stars 13.
Felipe Andrew is hitting that kind of stride where every match he wins by submission. He's becoming the elite of the elite. He's winning matches against, there's almost nobody that can contend with him, save perhaps Eric Muniz, and in just about every match he is utterly dominant.
Yeah, there's only a few guys in this year who can say they've taken time off of him, and of course, one of those being Adam Warzinski, who that's been a fun matchup back and forth between those two for quite a while. The Gracie matchup and his next one right after Euros, and then Nick Rod in the CGI. That one was also one of the few that didn't go his way.
Right, and when you can say that the only people that are even hanging in there with you are world champions,
Yeah.
you're at the elite level.
We talk about that elite level, and Philippe Andrew has been the guy in this division at this weight for a long time. And even when you talk about overall, I think he's been hovering between number 2 and number 3 overall ranked black belt in the world. And there's no reason why he shouldn't be in those top numbers.
And he's one of those guys now that, we used to see him up at super and ultra heavyweight. Now we're seeing him compete in the heavyweight and even sometimes the medium heavyweight divisions. He's proving that he can compete and compete well at any weight class.
Well, we're going to have that matchup for you in just a couple of moments. We'll be here with our break and be back in a couple minutes.
Ele não sabe se foram os ligamentos ou se foi o osso quebrado do pé. Pode pegar uma barra para cada um.
Como lutador de jiu-jitsu, eu sempre sonhei viver aqui nos Estados Unidos. E através da equipe Rich Lau, eu consegui realizar meu sonho. E hoje eu tenho meu green card e estou a caminho da cidadania.
É isso, estamos de volta então, daqui a pouquinho a final do grande GP, categoria peso pena, mas agora a gente segue com mais uma disputa de cinturão, luta boa demais que vocês só assistem aqui no BJJ Stars. Está em jogo então o cinturão meio pesado do BJJ Stars, oferecimento Hit Law, representando a equipe Checkmate. Ele que está de olho no título.
Welcome back, everybody, just in
Jansen
time
Gomes, bem-vindo.
for the big boys to make their way to the mat in what should be a scorcher between Jansen Gomes and Philippe Andrew. And Jansen making his way in with a 44% submission rate, only 3 submission losses in his career, making up 1/3 of his 9 total career L's. Currently the number 4 ranked medium heavyweight in the world. And this would be a big one on his leaderboard to take out Philippe Andrew.
Jansen is an absolute boogeyman. When he gets his pace going, when he finds his rhythm, it's so hard to keep up with him, to keep him down, to keep him off of you. But Philippe Andrew is maybe the mark in the heavyweight, medium heavyweight, super heavyweight division right now. He's the kind of athlete that has learned how to become threatening in every single position. If you stand with him, you have to get worried about about being thrown on your head. If you let him play guard, it's the triangles and the ankle locks you've got to worry about. If by some chance he is willing to come up and pass, he passes into half guard, smashes into mount, and then finishes that arm triangle or any number of collar chokes, Ezekiel's. He's dangerous from every position on the mat.
These two have only met one time previously, and that was at the PANS qualifiers in the final. Felipe coming out on top in that one. Looking for a repeat performance, maybe more, here against Gomes in this big-time matchup. And it's crazy to think that a guy in his prime, it seems as much as Felipe Andrew, is approaching Masters division.
That's a scary Masters division. If you ever have to enter into that one with Felipe Andrew, maybe move a division. Go up and wait, go down and wait, run away.
I like run away. Difficult to run away, though, when the grip strength is where it is. Both guys playing on the same side now, hand fighting on the right.
Felipe Andrew decides just to pull guard and already has that deep lasso in on his right side. Look for a triangle coming up with his left leg. Jansen, though, very respectful of that triangle, keeping his posture pretty much up and down. Doesn't want to get elevated like that.
Deftly avoids the sweep. Just a little touch of the hand and continue the momentum rolling over to the side.
And this is the trick, right, with Felipe. If you stay in the guard, very likely that he's going to either sweep you overhead or start throwing those triangles up. But if you lay back and let him pass, the pressure comes on almost instantly. Jansen is a distance player. He wants to play from outside and frustrate and move side to side. But getting tied up in Felipe's lasso like this early means Felipe gets to steer the fight.
Felipe, just firm grip on both of those hands.
And just a little threat. Here's the triangle if I want it, so you better back away. You better stay away from trying to pass me because I have this triangle here and it's waiting for you.
And thoroughly calm and unbothered is the 2023 world champion.
Now see Jansen, as soon as he gets out into space, he's going to start moving around.
Same left side grip. Oh, and Jansen goes in for it, immediately turned around by Andrew, who looks for the single leg, doesn't get it.
It was a beautiful shot by Jansen to set things up, but an even cleaner reshot by Felipe to turn the tides. Surprised that neither scored off of that exchange.
And the guard pull now looking for a leg.
We'll end up here in 50-50 with Felipe Andrey on the attack.
No points, no advantages, no quarter given. Passing the 4-minute mark, and this has felt very tight.
Jansen probably got the better of that exchange. Felipe can't score from this position. However, Jansen really wants to be entirely outside of the guard, completely away from it, no grips on him. That's where he does his best work. He's also going to want to be extra cautious of the footlocks that Felipe Andrew always has available at his disposal. I'm not sure which leg it was, but Jansen had his leg severely injured at the World Championships back in June.
Any word on what that recovery has been like for him?
He looks like he's finally healthy, but broken legs tend to stay pretty fickle after they've been broken.
And opting to come back to his feet is Andrew. As this has been the game they've played, getting the grips on the left-hand side for Andrew, fighting Andrew's right versus Jansen's left hand.
And another great shot by Jansen, but one of the things Felipe does best from the standing positions is switch his hips and make his partner, his opponent, eat the mat. Jansen's going to score for that, though. Great effort to stay on the leg, continue shooting, maintain control of the hips. And that's going to change the tides of this match. Jansen now up by 2 with a little less than 3 remaining.
Look at the power, though, of Andrew. Will he find another place to put those feet and force Jansen into an uncomfortable spot.
Interesting strategy for Philippe to try and get up. If he goes back to his feet, he's entering back into the wrestling world of Jansen. Jansen's shown that he can score from this position. So wondering if Philippe has a strategy to try and get on top this time. Great little ankle pick there.
That's the big question, right? When you get into these exchanges, you're down by 2 with 2 minutes left. Where is the best chance for you to score and get this match back?
And I think Philippe wisely deciding it's his guard with that triangle threat. But Jansen clearly ready for it, ducks his head out, and is now going to start the passing attack here with a good thread of his right arm into his solid leg drag. Nearly past the guard.
And Philippe Andrew in the kind of trouble we don't see him in often.
Yeah, there's a dual threat here. Around the neck, he's got that lapel grip, forcing him to the mat. And then there's back exposure here. Jansen now with the seatbelt. Great job keeping his hips higher than Philippe so Philippe couldn't jump over.
Now looking to take that back. You see, making sure that left hook doesn't get in is Philippe.
And the trick now for Jansen is going to be just to overwhelm Philippe with things to defend, threats to defend. It's the neck, it's the back, it's the pass, and the overlooked one, it's the clock. Right? If Philippe stays here, there's 45 seconds left until you pick up the loss. If he doesn't, if he acts, he might fall into the back control, or fall into the choke, or fall into side control. And all of those options are bad for Philippe, so he's got to find a way to come up into a scoring position at this point.
Searching for the leg one more time. 22 seconds left. Maybe that's Letitia in the background trying to give some encouragement.
This is a good position for Philippe. He can score here. He can pick up 2, but it's not going to be enough to overcome those advantages.
And that is going to be a marquee win for Jansen Gomes.
That's absolutely a landmark victory in Jansen's career. Felipe coming off of just a tremendous performance to win that title with 3 straight submissions in as many matches, to then fall to Jansen Gomes, who's coming in off of a 6-month layoff for injury. That's a huge win for Jansen, and you can see him kind of taking in the moment. He wears these wins emotionally, and I'm sure this is a huge one for him.
A little blood, it looks like, from the right-hand side of the mouth, unless I'm seeing that wrong. So leaving it all out there, quite literally.
Pessoal, temos novo campeão do cinturão meio pesado. Parabéns, vamos fazer barulho para Jansen Gomes, o Nenego.
And what does this do in your mind for Jansen Gomes?
It puts him pretty clearly in the pound-for-pound discussion. Jansen had a really devastating loss to Gustavo Batista in the finals of the World Championships this year, but he was on track to win the Absolute Division. So then to overcome a multiple-time world champion like Felipe Andrew and honestly kind of dismantle Felipe Andrew's game is a huge feather in Jansen's cap and a huge part of the pound-for-pound discussion that should be evolving right now around Jansen Gomes.
And wearing the belt with this victory tonight, and continues to add to the list of accolades in what's been a fairly recent black belt career, promoted in 2021, and finding himself up against the much more seasoned veteran with what, as you mentioned, was a matchup tonight of shutting down the thing that Felipe Andrew is best at.
And, you know, some of that wrestling, too, that really... Felipe Andrew is the kind of athlete most jiu-jitsu players do not want to stand with him. So to not just be willing to play in the standing exchanges, but to win all of the standing exchanges. This nice single that Felipe Andrew reversed, but he went back to the well, Jansen did, and took him down not once but twice from the standing position. That's got to be a huge mark of Jansen's kind of fearlessness and his willingness to take on the best in the world.
And we don't have control over the replays here because they're coming to us from Brazil, but it looked like Felipe was pretty deep in on that single leg and then let it go. Do you think that was maybe the key moment here that gave some of this away?
Yeah, I don't know what Jansen was doing that gave Felipe some pause there, but it looked like Felipe decided this is not worth pursuing. I'm better off playing for my guard and going back to my ace in the hole triangle. But Jansen was clearly ready for that and was able to start building off of that. And that could just come down to preparation, right? Jansen has to know that Felipe wants that triangle when he's in desperate mode, in desperation mode. And waiting for that triangle, passing his head to the outside, and then using that to build his best attack moments of the match is really what stole the match for him.
And we've seen a bunch of that tonight. Players finding the thing that they are best at and exploiting that for that final steal, that final win. And we're going to be going into our grand final of our Featherweight Grand Prix here in just a couple of moments. But first, make sure you find out who's number one at WNO 26 Friday, February 7th from the hangar at the OC Fairgrounds in Costa Mesa, California. A really fun venue if you've never been. Tickets are on sale right now. Go to tickets.flowsports.tv. And if you're not in the Southern California area, you can watch that live right here at FloGrappling. Coming up next, the main event, the grand final of this tournament at featherweight. Fabricio Andrey and Meyram Maquine in just a few minutes.
Valeu, Roman. Mais uma vez, então. Nego, eu acho que você não tem noção, meu irmão. Eu acho que você desconhece o teu potencial ou aonde você pode chegar e o show que você proporciona. Você chegou aqui, desconhecido para muita gente e venceu o peito. Alô, alô. Agora o microfone não pode falhar não, pelo amor de Deus. O Pétio, que já era um tremendo de um craque. Na sequência você foi a Forra e venceu o Braguinha. Agora você ganhou bem, venceu e convenceu o Felipe Andrey. Você agora é o dono do cinturão meio pesado. E você é um cara que quase não celebra. Você tem noção da tua conquista?
Pô, tenho sim. Treinei pra caraca minha vida toda, né? Pra estar nesses palcos, viver esses momentos, mas tava cansadão, não deu pra comemorar muito não. Mas eu tenho dimensão sim. Acho que eu não tenho total dimensão, né? Mas eu tenho dimensão do que eu estou vivendo hoje em dia. Eu tenho agora com o atual campeão do meio pesado, Felipe Andrey, consegui ganhar. Ganhei bem, queria ganhar melhor, mas vitória é vitória, tá bom? Agora é corrigir, descansar, recuperar a lesão e voltar aí ano que vem, melhor que esse ano.
Aquela saidinha marota ali do triângulo foi exaustivamente treinada.
Essa posição aí, faço um maior tempão, né, de passagem de guarda. Eu sabia que ele ia dar o bote no triângulo, né, e consegui ali reagir rápido. Esse era o meu medo, de não conseguir reagir tão rápido e cair no triângulo. Mas graças a Deus aí consegui sair ali do triângulo mais ou menos, quase passar, pegar as costas e se sagrar campeão.
Pode, parabéns. Esse título vai para o PPG, mas agora é tipo um déjà vu. Eu já vivi essa situação. Mais uma vez, você vai desafiar o Mika Galvão, vai ter a unificação do cinturão. Quais vão ser os desdobramentos agora?
Eu tô dentro da unificação, não sei se ele tá aí, mas ele tá aí ou não?
Mika, você tá na área?
Tá não?
Acho que não, mas dá o recado pro campeão.
Ah, tá, pensei que ele...
Campeão para campeão.
De campeão para campeão. Pensei que ele ia estar aí, mas não tá. Mas eu tô dentro aí, uma luta que o povo tá querendo ver há muito tempo. Se é isso que eles querem, então é isso que eles vão ter. Eu tô dentro.
Show de bola. Sensacional. Acho difícil também não levar o prêmio de luta da noite. É com você, Romão.
Eu também estou muito ansiosa. Eu quero saber de vocês. Quem está ansioso agora para a final? Deixa eu ver. Ansiosos ou não? Bora. Vamos começar então, gente. Final do GP. Categoria peso pena. Está em jogo a premiação de R$ 100.000.
It's been a
Coisa
night
boa demais. E claro,
of all kinds of
além de
fights,
se consagrar aí o grande
but it all comes down to
campeão
this.
nessa edição,
The
BJJ
Featherweight
Stars,
Championship.
a 14ª, a última de 2024.
Meyram Maquine,
Oferecimento
Fabricio Andrey,
Vamos chamar então o nosso
2 24-year-olds.
finalista,
Exciting,
representando a equipe
flashy,
Soldiers Jiu-Jitsu.
talented,
Barulho
but only
para
one can be our BJJ Stars featherweight champion.
You know, this is exactly the final I was hoping for personally, mostly because neither of these athletes like to participate in boring fights, strategic fights. They both want to win, but they both want to put on a show for the fans. We saw glimmers of that from Meyram in his very first match this evening with a sub 1 minute submission. We saw glimmers of that in Fabricio's passing, his takedowns. I expect just 7 minutes of nonstop action for the about $20,000 grand prize here and the title of featherweight champion of BJJ Stars.
And you can see Meyram seemingly up for this one. A little smirk on his face as he made that last step before running down the ramp. You talk about how you want to end the best year of your career. Running through the 3 guys he's done tonight would be ideal. But Hokage is going to have a different story for him.
representando a equipe da Allianz, Fabricio Andrey.
What kind of match will we see here? Are we going to see these guys start to, at some point, feel that there's a championship at stake? Or are they going to leave it all out there and go for broke?
I think and I hope both of these athletes will see the opportunity to put on a show as more important than the opportunity to win the grand prize. Obviously, as I mentioned, they both want to win. Of course, they both want to win. But these athletes like being in fun, explosive, entertaining fights. I think that's what we'll see from them.
Meyram Maquine versus Fabricio Andrey. Árbitro central, Espakauskas, excelente.
Never been submitted in competition is Maquine. Fabricio, exciting. And right now, they get aggressive with the grips early.
I'm curious to see if Fabricio is going to pull guard and stay away from that judo, or if he thinks that his Uchimata, his Kosotogari, his ankle pick are going to be enough to take down the experienced judoka in Meyram Maquine.
Well, it's one of those questions, right? Is this a moment where you have a chance to prove something? Go, hey, my judo is at this level. I can make it look better than yours.
Both these athletes also born in the same region, both born in Manaus. They are part of this super pack of featherweight Manawara athletes who spend a lot of time talking to each other. They have a very, very tight friendship outside of the mats, but when they're on the mats, they want to win. They want to be the top dog at featherweight. They want to be the top Manawara on the mats.
Well, when you're at a certain level in something, there's only so many people you can talk to and really have that understanding. No surprises here that it's different on the mats than off.
Great shot there by Hokage, and straight heavy on the collar. I don't think he'll finish his takedown, but he will definitely earn the respect.
And that's what we're talking about. a chance to tell everybody that he can play here.
Now does Meyram counter with some offense of his own, or is he paying too much attention now to Fabricio's grips?
Advantage Fabricio. How many times have these two found themselves in this position?
You know, I don't know that they've spent much time across the mats from each other, but definitely in these final situations, they've spent a lot of time, each of them a world champion, Meyram twice over a world champion. They know what it takes to be in a final, to win a final, even with all the marbles on the line.
Head position going back and forth as these two are really grinding on each other. This is the longest I feel like we've been on our feet in a match yet.
The referee's going to dish another penalty out. That puts us on a razor's edge with still 4:40 left on the clock. If either one of them picks up another penalty, that's game over.
Now, what happens if he double penalizes them a third time?
I guess we have no winner. No.
And luckily for us, none of the throws land during the beer ad. Looking under this time, Maquine. Maybe almost with a clock in their heads now of how long can I go without seriously threatening something.
And you know, I like aggressive penalties. I think that they drive action, but both of these athletes are working. The grip fights they're in, they're fighting for position, so I think maybe those penalties...
Wow!
Wow. Once again, that foot sweep that Fabricio does just so well, but the caliber of athlete on the feet Meyram is, that foot sweep is probably best in the world in jiu-jitsu.
And so far, statement made. Win or lose now. Fabricio Andrey showing that he might be top of the food chain with the judo at this weight class.
Meyram's got to be careful with that grip. They've been calling that.
Staying active, though.
Absolutely, trying to make use of it. He's controlling Fabricio's balance.
Honestly, I'd love to see these two stand up and do some more judo. Of course, I know it's a jiu-jitsu broadcast. But
no, but you're right. As far as jiu-jitsu players go, these are the two best judokas for jiu-jitsu in the world of jiu-jitsu.
Maquine looking for some sort of entry that can elevate. And Fabricio up to the task.
The leg pummeling he's doing right now, just trying to keep the inside position, trying to keep his legs in a good position. Really, really remarkable. But Meyram's going to use that to sweep. He's very good at sweeping from this position.
This feels like a mongoose versus a cobra right now. The speed of the reactions.
Now Fabricio's starting to build some pressure. But Meyram has a chance to come up. There's potentially a shot to the back. Fabricio going to use that to get into the leg drag. Wild movement in these exchanges.
90 seconds left. Both guys starting to feel it. Fabricio 2-point lead plus the advantage.
Smart of him to kind of solidify his grip on this leg drag, dive in, and goes back to the other side. Lets everything go.
But this is interesting, right? Because we have the double penalty on both sides. You can't even give the penalty away in order to stall out if you're Fabricio. You have to be active here.
As if these two guys needed more incentive to just to just fly all over each other.
Maquine taking his time to reset his uniform and maybe think about his game plan for the next 80 seconds.
Starting no grips, he's going to come on top. I think that's a wise choice. You don't want Fabricio to just kind of ice you out. Much better to at least find close guard. Fabricio's got the knee across though. We're in kind of they call the Roger Gracie position.
Wants to step around for a moment, not able to. 55 seconds left.
Good little shin pin there.
Yeah.
This shin pin is difficult to deal with no-gi, but when the top layer has the benefit of that pan grip as well, that shin pin is really difficult to move around. Now I'm looking for a scissor sweep, but I think just to get Fabricio to react.
25 seconds left. Not much room for Maquine, but he's trying to scoot under.
And every time he does, look at how Fabricio takes his center leg around the outside, starting to create these angles, building pressure, building some kind of advantage, whether it's with the angle or the hip position.
And there he goes, trying to walk towards the head, keeping himself moving. And that is going to be a major, major win. Hokage with the huge celebration. He knows he just changed the conversation for 2025.
This is a huge win for Fabricio. He fell earlier this year in the PANS finals in a really controversial final against Kennedy Maciel. He didn't have exactly the major performance he was hoping for this year, but to come out after all of it in December and take down the world champion Meyram Maquine is a huge way to kick off the 2024 season, 2025 season.
What a cap to the end of 2024 against a guy who won Worlds this year, won Euros this year, got third place in Absolute as a featherweight this year. And Fabricio Andrey, no blink, no hesitation, came out and first and foremost made the very clear point that he can play on the feet with the best.
Well, and that's just the thing, right? Is he beat the world champion, but he scored in what is that world champion's domain, right? He scored on the feet, scored the takedown, beat Meyram where Meyram is best. And with the 100,000 reais grand prize, it's about $20,000 grand prize. It's a nice little chunk of change to be walking home with.
Yeah, not bad for an afternoon jiu-jitsu. And lots of love from his supporters. And you talked about it. I mean, and think of also doing this after kind of the rough patch he's had here at the back end of the season with losing in quarterfinals at Worlds, getting submitted by Diego Oliveira. The couple of losses both in weight and absolute at Abu Dhabi. And here he is now taking this win off of the best in class.
Yeah, you can never count Fabricio Andrey out. He is in it to win it in the most exciting fashion possible, and that's sometimes what counts against him, right? He takes big risks, but when they pay off with performances like this.
And you can see how much this means to him, right? This isn't one of the majors, but this is something that's grown to a level that is so well respected and so well loved. And then when you have the type of competition that was in here, right? Let's think about this night, because you had Kennedy Maciel in here. You had Diego Sodre, who he beat earlier on. You had Kleber Souza, Israel Almeida. The names who were in here, this is on the level of any tournament in the world.
And Fabricio, I think part of the reason this is such an emotional win for him is he has been clamoring for a featherweight GP at BJJ Stars. It seemed like every time BJJ Stars brought around a Grand Prix, and it was, let's say, lightweight or absolute or heavyweight, super heavyweight, medium heavyweight, there was Fabricio in the BJJ Star comments saying, Feppa, where is the featherweight Grand Prix? I want it. I'm going to win it. Feppa delivered, and so did Fabricio.
And this tournament, of course, delivered in spades, as we saw all different versions of how the featherweights can play, from slow and methodical to high flying with the armbar by Maquine over Souza to get us off in our second matchup. And then finally this one where the gutsy performance, the decision to go into the place where the world champion is best and show that you belong there.
And, maybe that's part of what it was for Fabricio, right? We talked about how Meyram is explosive and dangerous, and some of these other athletes are a little bit more strategic or precise, but Fabricio can play it all. He's got a very hybrid game, and maybe being able to fit all of those different shoes is what kind of gave him the advantage to taking this division.
And still riding high, as you can see on his face. And what a journey it was for him tonight, starting off with the matchup against the American Malachi Edmond. That it felt like it was going to be a more kind of wild, high-flying matchup. Ended up being a little bit more clinical on the side of Fabricio Andrey. And then that second round win on points over Diego Sodre was really, really kind of a more calm, more focused matchup from him. And then this one, where it just felt like he threw it all to the wind and said, no, I'm going to win like Fabricio Andrey, not like the guy trying to beat somebody else.
I think there's a little bit of Fabricio has been on the mats with so many of these athletes that he knows where they're good and he knows what he has to do, or he knows what he thinks he has to do to beat them. And there are some matches, I think, like this Meyram match, where maybe he hasn't competed against him a lot. He knows what Meyram's good at, and of course he wants to beat Meyram where Meyram's best.
And that he did tonight, taking home that big prize and the belt and the title of the best featherweight at BJJ Stars. You ask what you want for, and some people aren't able to come up to that moment. He came up to it beautifully and ends our night with, we've had some surprises on the evening. We've had some big moments on the evening, but we ended this with, I think, one of the best feel-good moments of the evening.
Absolutely, yeah. Fabricio kind of delivering on the performance that he wanted to deliver when he was asking for this tournament has to feel good, and to see somebody who's had the up and down year that Fabricio has had finish it off with this big kind of exclamation point, I am the best featherweight in the world right now, defeating the world champ, has to feel amazing. This was the start of the big takedown exchange here.
And this is where, right out the gate, you saw that Fabricio came to play, and that maybe Meyram didn't have the advantage in this space that might have been expected. We talked beforehand about the people and the level and the sizes that he's landed that. Go ahead. I know that you saw something there.
That Kouchigari again. I didn't exactly see the foot sweep, but if you want to learn a Kouchigari for jiu-jitsu, go watch Fabricio Andrey. He hit 2 of that same foot sweep tonight, beautifully timed. The way he makes that leg light and then pulls it in. We've seen him do it again and again, gi or no gi. That may be the new Fabricio Andrey, like ace in the hole specialty.
And the ace came up with a pair of them, and he rode all the way to the river for a big-time win. And speaking of big-time wins, we had a lot of moments tonight. We had the blue belts kick things off with an exciting matchup. We had Leticia Cardozo and Isadora Cristina going at each other. We had this featherweight Grand Prix, some interesting stuff in the middle, and of course the big moment for Jansen Gomes against Felipe Andrew. Over the course of this night, I know that you're a featherweight yourself, and maybe that will lead you towards some of those moments as your favorites, but anything from this evening really stand as top for you?
No, I think, the submission of the night, pretty clear, pretty obvious, was Meyram's submission in the very first round. That was just a display of just beautiful jiu-jitsu, great judo into jiu-jitsu. That was incredible, but the Felipe Andrew and Jansen Gomes match was probably one to go back and watch several times. This final match between Fabricio and Meyram was exactly what I hoped for and expected. And especially, I think, the Peter Frank and Jaime Canuto match, a little bit more tactical and technical, but both of those guys were moving in such a way that Peter had a beautiful bite on that footlock that he was going to ride off into the sunset, but Jaime just moving his hips and untangling that footlock and getting safe, scoring. So a lot to go back and rewatch.
And not tapping when it sounds like he may have broken his foot in that exchange. So you talk about the toughness of these guys, and that's on display in spades. And speaking of on display, we have more coming your way. This is sort of the cap on the jiu-jitsu season here for 2024 at FloGrappling. But coming up on February 7th, as we've been seeing throughout the night, WNO 26 from the hangar at the OC Fairgrounds in Costa Mesa, California. If you're anywhere near there, go check it out. It's one of the most fun places in California to watch competitive combat sports. Tickets available now at tickets.flowsports.tv. And if you're somewhere like we are here in Austin, Texas, well, then you can catch that on FloGrappling, as you can with all of the great competition. Corey, it's been a blast here tonight. Final thoughts on this BJJ Stars 14.
BJJ Stars and Fepa Lopes delivered as always. Can't wait to see what BJJ Star has coming up in the 2025 season. I'm sure it's going to be a lot more Grand Prix, a lot more mega super fights, and a lot more just phenomenal jiu-jitsu. The year isn't over yet. We've still got Nogi Worlds to contend with in just a couple of weeks. But as the season winds down, we're looking ahead to 2025 and brand new stories to talk about in the 2025 season.
Oh, yes. For my friend here, Corey Stockton, for our production squad, I'm Rich Slayton. We'll see you back here next time for the next edition of BJJ Stars.